mushroom powered.
Hmm.
It's got reishi and lion's mane in it.
I've heard good things about lion's mane.
Oh, that's like the third one I've drank in the last
Reishi,
like 4 days, and I
lion's
haven't
mane.
felt any difference. So I don't know.
Mushroom power.
This is not cordyceps.
It doesn't have
It'll
no
start
port.
growing in your body and take you over.
So I brought those mojitos in case anyone wants one.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Mojitos. Why the heck am I drinking Gatorade?
Spindrift. It's just carbonated water, lime juice, and mint. And I'm addicted to them. They're so freaking good. So it's a whole thing of that right there.
Is that a Safeway purchase?
Walmart has them sometimes. City Market has them more regularly. I think Sprouts might have it, but I don't know if they carry that variety. And then apparently you have two of these.
It's not talking about.
So this is the Arturo Fuentes Forbidden X. Okay, $50. He says that they only get like a few boxes in a year, like maybe 3 a year, and you have to sell a certain amount of Arturo Fuentes cigars to qualify to get a box. And they use like the top 3 or top 1% of their tobacco for these.
Good read.
I know. And he said it's full-bodied and spicy. And I asked what the wrapper was, and he said they don't tell you. So we have no idea what the wrapper is. They're very secretive about it.
That's interesting.
And yeah, it was either that or like he said the $60 Padrones were like the best that he offers.
Okay.
And then there were a handful of other ones, but like with him saying that he's like, I don't even buy these myself because I want to save them for my customers. So it's like, felt like the stars aligned, and that was the one to go with. So.
It's weird. It's only thing on one. Oh no, now it's not.
I got the one of those is super barrel, and this Rebel left over.
You've had like one like this before, right? That had like a super thin piece of.
Yeah, I don't
Spanish cedar
know.
wrapping
I don't
it.
know which it was though. But
It smells amazing to me.
yeah, man, the humidor, good stuff.
Yeah.
So Dom, have you had one of these before? Is that why you chose it, or?
I've had Opus X in the
Yep.
past, not like this kind.
Okay.
But to me, when someone says good cigar, that's the brand that comes in my head.
Gotcha.
So that's
Okay.
why.
Yeah, it smells amazing.
It was weird because, I mean,
Try one of these.
it's not like he led me to it or something where he's like, hey, people are buying a lot of these. I was just like,
Ooh, it's very nice.
where's your Opus X?
Yep.
And
Like on a hot day,
That's
just
what he
like
had, so it's like-
slamming some of that.
Yeah.
okay, he'll like this.
That's cool.
Okay, and then this is
And sure, the
Another
price
spoils
tag
you.
matches your age. So
Odyssey. Have we had Odyssey?
Those are the ones I was trying to tell you about the other day. I said it started with an O, but I couldn't remember. It's a $3.25 cigar. So don't feel obligated. I've also got some Rocky Patals in
Well,
there.
I might go to an Edge afterwards.
Even if you smoke a third of it and
Don't like it?
toss it,
Okay.
yeah. But for the price, surprising, like kind of nutty and
pretty good.
fairly mild and not horrible.
You're doing very brave work scouring through that tier of cigar because you probably have a lot of duds.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's smoking it without sipping any whiskey or anything, so nothing to cut the.
Right. I'll do this. You're gonna start with yours. That's been in my humidor since Wednesday. So it's had a few days. But hopefully
It feels great, yeah.
even out. It didn't feel bad when I got it, but
This guy.
Do you like use this one on it or?
I wouldn't really. I would
the V
Yeah,
cut.
yeah, the V cut.
No, yeah, I would just go.
Because I'm like, I don't think it'll work.
I just snip the tip.
Hey,
Hey.
So I have a local ghost story I was going to share.
Nice.
And then we'll have to see if we can plan something around Halloween. Do a little bit later. I can bring some candles out.
Nice. That'd be good.
Read some more Poe.
I'm down for it. Yeah, I haven't smoked in
torch?
so long.
Oh yes, please. I'm doing it like real small, see, because I always suck them down. Maybe it'll keep me from. Just sucked a piece of.
I know, yeah, there's some stuff that's going on.
Just don't mind me choking on the side here. And that one's, yeah, that one's yours, sir.
Appreciate that.
First impressions of a $50 cigar.
So far, so good.
How's the draw? Is it good?
Yeah, draw's good. You could just entire cigar just has a nice,
There you go.
solid, consistent.
Here, I might light mine.
Burnt the heck out of that.
Quarter gone.
Just want to light mine unevenly.
So we are on 23, 24?
3 episodes.
Like that? Yeah, last time you were, coming back from Gunnison and didn't make it in time? Is that what happened?
Probably something
We,
like that.
we haven't been able to get an update on the Mormon situation that happened like 3 months ago or whatever that
Yeah,
was.
they just texted me today, said, "Hey, can we come over and hang out?" And I was like,
Really?
"No, we're going out to Devil's Kitchen tonight." No, I guess the biggest update is they've been coming once a week, once every 2 weeks or something for a while. Like
First
it's
meeting
like
went
Sundays. Yeah,
well. Nice.
because just have them over when we have like a bunch of other people and they just kind of enjoy it. And we do talk a lot of theology, and no one really like moves their position, but no one fights. And
Has it been insightful for you? Like, have you learned?
yeah, because I don't know a lot about Mormonism. And granted, they're really young, so they kind of remind you of like, think of the average 20-year-old Christian, or yourself at 20 trying to, it's like, your 40-year-old self would destroy your 20-year-old self.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things where they're like, I haven't really thought about that. But you're not trying to do that to them either. We're just trying to befriend them, but they're kind of sweet kids.
Did have any like adults accompanied them, or has it just been them the whole time?
Just spin them down.
That is really surprising.
Yeah. I keep waiting for like the smack to get laid down.
Yeah.
But no. But what did change was one of the girls said like, "Yeah, I was just informed that I'm gonna have to go away." Like the one that kept like initiating coming over, and the other one was kind of like a sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
And
They're
they're
supposed to do like certain missions work, right?
yeah, and they're
required to.
they're local priest apostle. Decided she's a much better fit than Craig. So they like within like days they just shipped her out to Craig, and then like there's this new girl that's come, and she's a lot quieter. So like they're both sidekicks, so they initiate coming over a lot less. But just like this week, there's been like a flurry of like there must be like a I don't know a sales-a-thon or something because there was like barbecue like at our church. It's like not coming to a barbecue at your church. Can we come over tonight? Which I would have said yeah, but it's like we're going out. But it's kind of just interesting to hear like for like my kids to hear because we talk about it a lot afterward too. And it's funny we found like a Joseph Smith like book like that. I guess the girls told us that he didn't write it, like his nephew wrote it. That's also named Joseph Smith. But gave a lot of background. Like I didn't know like their Mecca's Missouri, and they got ran out. I guess that's kind of general knowledge. I just didn't know that.
That sounds familiar. I think I knew that at one point, but I just always
And like
think
that's where the New
Utah.
Jerusalem will be. So
Missouri.
they still kind of hold on to that.
Now we're
But there's like
talking.
sects now that are like that
I'm
was
convinced.
true. No,
Yep.
that wasn't true.
Yep.
But it's just really interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's just tough because I asked them like, because they were showing us like there's this one part and Jesus shows up and the whole multitude goes by him, so they can all see the holes in his hands and in his side and everything. And it's basically like I mean, it really does. He just basically like lifts like phrases and stuff from the New Testament, like kind of plants them. So if you're familiar with the Bible, you're like, oh, that's a really familiar couple sentences in a really bizarre context.
Interesting.
But then I asked him like, because that was like to prove, who he was, to authenticate it. Right? And as Christians, we would be like, that reminds me instantly of Thomas, right? Because everyone's like, he's alive, and he's like, I don't buy it unless I see the holes in that guy's hands. Don't tease me, kind of a thing. And so that's what made me think of it. And then the readers were like, see, so he authenticated himself to all the people. But this is like out here. And I just asked, I was like, what would holes in his hands and feet mean to a bunch of people that have lived in the Americas the last like 500 years? Because
That's an interesting.
his apostles are familiar with crucifixion, because that
Right.
was a Roman execution.
Right.
Yeah.
What would that mean to people here?
People in the Americas.
Like, oh, so you're some dude with scars in your, and they're like, oh, well, pretty sure they did crucifixions here too back then and stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. 'Cause I was-
Folks in the Americas are like that.
yeah, so
Roman execution style. We like that. Let's bring it here.
yeah, even though their stuff was written in New Egyptian, and it was from, I forget, is it Moroni who came over here? I'm forgetting it now. But they came, I think we kind of pinpointed it, like he came, it's like a family or something, or a group of Israelites that like traveled, I guess, the Mediterranean and then the Atlantic. In they pinpoint that the year is like 500 BC or something like that. So this is like well after David, I think, but well pre-Christ. And maybe I'm making that date up, but I was just like, I mean, they're not familiar with Rome like at all. But I was like, interesting though, because they're far out enough from Egypt. Like, why would they write all their scriptures in, to use a woke term, the language of their oppressors?
Right.
But really, like, why would you do that? Several hundred years later, and who knows, maybe they would. But it was just, there's just kind of all these like historical questions that you ask, like, if that's true, and to me, like, the more I get into the Book of Mormon, it's just like, I don't know, if I wanted to make something up, make it like Christian adjacent, give it enough Christianese to like make really undereducated Christians say, ooh, oh, well, it's just like,
Kind of like Seventh-day Adventists do that a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like
it's just like the Bible, it's gotta be true.
I thought they were just another denomination for the longest time until I
Got into them.
Dara's family, her like mom and aunt, I think, were brought up in the Seventh-day Adventists, and so they're like, they told me about it, and I'm like, that's actually kind of nuts. Almost cult-like behavior. It's weird stuff.
Well, I was listening to someone talk about Seventh-day Adventists, and they said worshiping on Sunday is the beast.
Whoa.
And I was like, I don't even know what that phrase means,
Could be,
really.
Yeah.
Because I think of the beast as like a noun, not a verb, I guess. Worshiping on Sundays like is the beast.
Huh.
They didn't flesh it out for me, but it was like that was what. I don't know that they officially believe that now, but that was like what. Who's the lady? Ellen G. White? Or
I don't know.
Yeah.
That was like her official stance on it.
Huh.
It's really bizarre. Why do people do that? just like make their own fan fiction of Christianity.
It is. It's
It's like the one
fan
religion
fiction.
to like make. It's crazy.
That's a great way to put it.
yeah.
Mormonism,
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witness, and Seventh Day, as far as I can understand, are like they're fan fiction.
It's like the equivalent of like the original author died, and so a new author is continuing the series. Not as well received.
Yeah, just a little less quality.
Yeah.
The sequel trilogy.
Characters aren't quite what they used to be.
They're just introducing new characters that people don't like.
Yeah.
But that with Mormonism, you know, he was able to pull the wool over people's eyes because like science wasn't where it was now.
Archaeology,
Communications.
because they depend a lot on that.
Yeah, but now that we have all of that and we can like see all of these Mormon resources laid out, it's like it's dumb, it's wrong. But people are still just, you know.
That's what makes. I don't even want to say mainstream Christianity because I don't even know what I mean, but like Christianity, interesting because the more advanced we get, the more it feels like it authenticates it,
Yes. Absolutely.
right? Versus this other stuff.
I agree.
Yeah, so I mean that's fine. That hasn't been as frequent as it was, but it's kind of a good experience.
Cool.
And like I said before, I respect anyone who has the guts to come door to door selling anything. You know, 20-year-old kid that could be off partying or something, and they're like doing that.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like, I'm not trying to like blast you. I want to love on you guys, feed you, hang out a little bit, send you on your way, and maybe that changes something for you 10 years down the road.
Right.
You know? And we talk a lot of Christian stuff. And they don't know the Bible very well at all.
They
Because
they don't tend to. They're more focused on the Book of Mormon
yeah.
because they know that the Bible is corrupted and flawed, and so they don't want to linger there too much.
Yeah, and so they're like, at least these girls are like, the Bible's legit, scripture, and the Book of Mormon's legit, but like, that's really where it's at, is the Book of Mormon. And the Bible's like supporting documents or something.
Mormonism doesn't claim the Bible's legit, though. That's why the Book of Mormon exists. Is to correct all of the flaws.
I think they're probably trained or too smart to go into that right away.
It's been my experience. They tend to keep it pretty high level, at least for early conversations. You know, they'll say that they're a Christian, they believe what we believe, but then they'll kind of get into like, you know, kind of an apostate situation. You know, we've got these modern day prophets that can really help guide us. But then if you really dive into it, you know, they really aren't claiming to be Christians like we are.
Yeah, it's basically a lie.
And they don't respect the Bible like we do.
Like it is Mormon teaching that like Protestant Christianity, whatever, anything aside from Mormonism is false.
Yeah.
So them saying we're Christian just like you, like that's a lie from their own mouth.
It is, yeah. I think it's fairly dishonest. It's very dishonest.
Yeah, and then we had some Jehovah's Witnesses come by, but I haven't had them like in and hang out. They're older, they're like in their 40s, like a husband and wife, but they've come by twice, and they're like slick. They're like all dressed all Sunday best, and they have an iPad and all the stuff, and they'll show you like a video on like, and none of it. They're interesting because the girls are like, you want to talk about God, and they're like, we're whatever, but it's called like jw.com or something, like you wouldn't. And their videos that they wanted to show me, like, oh, you have kids, so like, here's our thing on bullying, or all these just kind of moral self-helpy things. And I didn't really have the time or the care to get deep into the whatever. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It taught me to stay home in the middle of the day. No sir.
I had a couple JWs come by, a man and a woman. They had the iPad. He got like a solid like minute or two into his spiel before he like let me speak on like I'm a Protestant.
Yeah.
It's like I could have saved you 2 minutes. And I was like, I wasn't able to engage him at the time, but I told him like if he wanted to come back and talk, we could. And I have not seen him since.
Yeah.
It was like a year ago.
Yeah, I was really prepared for, because I know more Jehovah's Witnesses just growing up, and they didn't get into that at all. It was all kind of just like around the topic.
Yes.
And I'm sure they would get into it, but because the ones I knew from before, they get deep into like, Jesus isn't God, here's why, look at this scripture, and this scripture, this scripture. And they're good at like pinpointing those scriptures are just ambiguous enough when isolated, you're like, wow. And of course they have their own Bible, right? But
I bought a Book of Mormon and a what's it called? New Living Translation, New
Of the Bible?
New World Translation,
New World.
there is a New Living Translation.
Whatever the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh,
I don't remember what it's called. It's
I see.
new something.
What is a new one?
Might be. I had bought like both of those so that I could have them on hand in case they come to the door and like the one time.
well, I could have got you one. They're always pushing. I've got like 3 copies of the Book of Mormon now.
Yeah.
I think I got mine for free too. Yeah, I think I just went on their website and was like, "Here's my address." You know, they sent me one.
The girl just gave me one.
Yes, and they're not hard to come by. I feel like what you were talking about, like there's no Mormons I've come across that are like lukewarm.
Oh yeah, they're
Yeah.
hardcore.
And if they do have any doubts, they're probably like holding them down way deep and not showing anybody. Because I think that the cult-like grip is way stronger in Mormonism than it is in JW.
That's one of the things that interests me is how they accomplish that. Because even you see so many Christians that try to have that grip like on their kids,
Yeah.
and even where I'd say probably inappropriate, but they still can't pull it off, like as dictatorial as they are. And it's like they seem to do that really well. Where if they are shedding lots of disciples or apostate people, you don't see it or know it.
It's very binary.
Like there's
You're in or you're
subgroups
out.
where you're like, I'm out of Mormonism, but like you just kind of see like Mormons are like they're very content with their thing. They're not like searching or whatever.
I know historically they were known for, if you wanted to leave the church, they really encourage all friends and family to basically just ostracize you.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a massive divorce from family and friends and your place of worship if you do want to leave. So I think it's either you're all in, or all of a sudden you make an extreme, life decision to leave all of that. I think that's why maybe.
So you keep it secret until you're ready to like pull the
And it's
trigger.
also probably very insular. So it's like that's probably, if you're growing up in Mormonism, that's all you know. And so you have to get a certain dose of the outside world, a certain amount of that to be able to consider like, oh, maybe I don't want this thing, because that's
Well, like Islam, I wonder how similar, because they're famous for like, we'll kill you.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big decision too.
I think the more fundamentalist Mormons, that was that whole book that Krakauer wrote, Under the Banner of Heaven. Was that based in Colorado City, I think, kind of the corner of the state, where the gal wanted to leave the church, and so they used to do what they called blood atonement. So you basically have to kill them and shed their blood to save them if they're trying to leave the church. And I think there's a lot more that went to that story than just that, but that used to be kind of how the Mormons rolled way back in the day. Like you leave and we have to basically sacrifice you so that you actually can
Well,
go to
because
paradise.
we did ask them about like baptizing the dead and bringing the dead in and stuff. And they did talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
And I forget like their terms, but it's just like, yeah, if Grandpa Joe didn't know the truth, and it's like you got to bring him into the fold like retroactively. And then there was
Interesting idea.
some kind of weird, it's not confirmation, I forget it now, but it was like a man can do it, but a wife or a woman has to do it through her man or something. Which I shouldn't bring stuff up that I can't articulate. What were they talking about?
It's
But, yeah.
true in Islam too. Like when I was in Morocco, I think I've shared this before, but they joked around, our interpreters while we were there, like, yeah, so, because someone mentioned, you guys are so hospitable. I mean, anywhere you go, you walk into a little shop, and they'll ask if you like some tea. You want to have some tea? And it's really an invitation to sit down and have a conversation. So they're back there, they make some tea. And this is just the shop owner. And they'll have a little table, they'll sit down, they'll pour their tea, like they, pour it
Not like
really
Europeans,
hot.
where you gotta pay to use the bathroom.
Those
And then-
Muslims will just sit around drinking tea all day long.
Oh yeah, you just sit down and have a cup of, it's always mint tea. I mean, there's actual tea in it, but they add mint and a bunch of sugar. But they said the way it used to be was you would be very hospitable, invite, someone into your home that doesn't believe in Muhammad and all that. And then you entertain them and you're hospitable for 7 days in your home. And then they were jokingly like, but not. Like, yeah, so after 7 days, if you don't accept, then we kill you. Because then you really are a true... Yeah, that's okay.
You're like,
we don't do that anymore, yeah.
Just kidding. Am I? No, just kidding.
Yes, but...
Hear the door locked.
Oh no.
And, we're there in their country, and they're saying this. It's like, oh, okay.
This is so funny.
Yeah. Because then you're a true infidel. If after 7 days and you've heard the
Yeah.
truth of Muhammad,
Then you're in rebellion, deep, high-handed
you
rebellion.
might as well just be executed. It's like, oh, yeah.
That's the thing with like Christianity though. I think it's one of the one religions that you can be like that people can be lukewarm in, because there's like even like with Mormonism, it's kind of like their whole life. It's like, I'm not saying like being a Christian is not your whole life, but like it's really easy to be a lukewarm Christian, to be like,
Unless the state is involved. And things
yeah,
get
well then,
complicated.
yeah. But like, yeah, but like with Christianity, it's like, yeah, my parents were Christian. I go to like church sometimes, but it doesn't like require you to like, oh, you're gonna go leave now for a while and go to a mission. Like that's a choice that you can do if that's what you're feeling called to. But like with Mormon, like all these other religions, like that's it's something that's like, it's like every day you're doing something. It's a huge time commitment usually, and like you're going on missions. There's like huge like masses and stuff you have to go to that are like the whole day. Well, like Christianity, it's like you go to your church like every Sunday, and then
Christianity is like
you're supposed to read your Bible.
Protestant Christianity is
Yeah.
the most like bare bones thing. Because like trying to strip away all the unnecessary stuff, That's kind of how I feel about a lot of denominations. Like, I would never say that one single denomination or like style of Protestant faith is like
Correct.
I mean, there might be a correct one that's closer than the others, but I don't think that that's like anything worth talking about in terms of like being an important thing.
Like none that would be like salvation jeopardizing.
Yeah, and like the beginning of Mere Christianity, like the preface or whatever, Lewis is like, I want to bring you into the hallway that is Christianity, and behind all these doors are all the different denominations, and I'm going to leave you in the hallway, and I'm not going to tell you which door to go into. I'm like, that's nice. That's good.
I was talking to someone at our church, and there was like these differing opinions of guys like our age, and one guy was, of course we're post-mill, right? So our expectation is whatever, in a million years that the whole world will be Christian. So they were like, what would that look like? And he thought it would be like a monoculture, and the others were like, no, the cultures will be really diverse. They'll just all be Christian and
harmony.
different expressions of different appropriate expressions of Christianity. But and I'm much more in that camp, because that
Makes sense.
And
It already exists.
nothing about anything else that God's created is like mono anything.
Exactly.
But it was interesting because it was like that was his expectation. It was like there'll be no more left-handed people, and maybe not that, but
Well, and I feel like the diversity amongst humans, both like in our like biology and our like culture and geography and all that, just kind of reflects back to an infinite God. Because it's like all of these different branching things. It's like when you put the like the marker on the paper towel and you put the drop on it, and like all of the like colors come out and all that. That's kind of how I feel about it. It's like it doesn't need to be like, no, we all need to be course corrected back to the original thing. And it's like, no, I think this is just humanity's a nice expression of a creative God.
Yeah, and that's where it came from, because we were talking about we were talking about law and how many unjust laws we have and all these things. They're talking about God's law, and then they're just like, so yeah, every country will have the same laws. And we were like, I get the spirit of what you're saying, but that can't be, because you have different laws, like based on like different things in the environment. Necessitates some laws and some other. Like when we live on Mars, like there'll be just things that we don't deal with on Earth.
There might not be gerrymandering laws on Mars.
Exactly. But I guess that's what I fully expect. It's nice to predict the future because you don't have to like prove it or anything. I should get into climate change or something. But for us to explore, I mean, I expect a version of Star Wars to be real.
That'd be cool.
It could take millions of years, and maybe, you know, God's clock isn't that long or something. But like theoretically, I expect that type of a situation to be real. I don't know about all the different species of organisms. Maybe I have no idea.
No.
There are no current strategies to create internet communications between Earth and the Moon. So we have some communications problems at the very least that we have to figure out, because like you have to kind of send information basically in like through a physical space, right? Like that's how we do things now. There's no way to just teleport information from one physical location to another. We're not at that point.
Yeah.
So like, intergalactic travel maybe, but like communication intergalactically is, how on earth are we going to ever be able to do that?
Right.
You have your own little planets of their own little
Just
form
make
of Christianity.
little portals where we put USB drives in and send them over to Galaxy 4.
Well, who knows?
No,
And it's
like
definitely a God of the gaps type of a thing. But you think the Apostle Paul's generation had any current strategies for the smartphone? Like just they wouldn't have been able to articulate the idea, let alone how to do it.
Sure.
So I fully anticipate us figuring stuff like that out.
I am super curious to, so you know, like the people use the, like this is a Carl Sagan thing, I think, on his show, was it Cosmos? Carl Sagan show?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Talking about like how we as three-dimensional beings look at like a piece of paper and like a stick figure on it. And like we have an apple, and if we were to like put the apple through their world, they would just see the slice of the apple move through it.
Right.
Because they're 2D, and it's like people saying how there's however many dimensions in reality. It's like, do you think us as three-dimensional beings will ever be able to like, not necessarily travel into the other dimensions, but like be able to harness them
Experience
and
them.
access them in some kind of way?
You sound like Bill Cipher right now.
It's because I am. Because like that could be a way to like have that kind of interstellar communication and open up tons of possibilities about like traveling physically through the world.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible. If it is, that'd be.
I don't know. My mental limitations are I can't even concept. Like I've read things about like 10, 11 dimensions. I can't even conceive of like what that even means.
I hear that a lot in the stuff I read, the shows I watch. That Einstein's theories definitely support. There's almost no question about it anymore. It supports at least 12 dimensions. It's like, why 12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how?
You can't like I can't even
'Cause, like,
visualize
what-
a fourth.
I guess just like what does that even mean?
Right.
Like the fourth like is like time, they say, like or kind of. Some people say that. I guess they mean something else when they say the fourth dimension.
They'll call it like, I mean, space-time, right? Like space is 3 dimensions, time is a fourth, so it's like
Yeah.
kind of like 3 plus another thing.
But beyond that, like what is a fifth dimension? I don't know what that means.
Which the way time interacts with space is like, I can't wrap my head around that at all.
What's that guy's name? He's on like just about every podcast as a guest. He's an astrophysicist, older guy.
Not Neil deGrasse.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I guess he's coming to Junction.
Should have said the black guy.
That's right.
That would
I
have. He was stuck
I
out.
saw that like there was like a billboard.
Is he
or
coming to
something on that.
Junction?
I think CMU
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I saw the
I would
billboard
go
on
see him
that
to
theater.
Speak on astrophysics stuff.
I'm not the biggest fan of his, but I'd go see him.
Usually,
Yeah. He comes off as just, I've got it all figured out. I know everything. But
Yeah.
he's interesting to listen to, and I don't agree with a lot of what he has to say about religion and some of the physics stuff. But
He's funny because once he jumps into a religion, and a lot of he's very unsophisticated
Yep.
agreed.
in that,
Yep.
which is just one of those interesting things.
Yeah, he'll be at the Asteria Theater.
Saw that post.
I did not know that. I would go see him.
I'd go too. Yeah.
Speaking of guests, Robert Epstein, the Google guy whose wife was killed by Google,
Yes.
back on Rogan.
Really?
Yeah. Appeared within the last week.
I'll have to catch that.
Yep, me too. I haven't watched it yet.
We're about halfway through him interviewing Dennis Quaid about the
Oh,
new
nice,
Reagan
yeah.
movie, and that's a good conversation.
How was the movie?
Great.
Well,
What movie?
Reagan,
The Reagan movie.
Oh, I didn't know Quaid was. Does he play Reagan?
he plays Reagan. He does a great job. Like gets the
He's a good
facial
actor.
expressions going. They put a little blush on his cheeks because Reagan always had like pink cheeks.
And it's,
you know,
it's supposed to cover, which I honestly, these are my least favorite kind of biopics that do this, but it covers a good chunk of his life.
Yeah.
Like if you're willing to go like three plus hours on a movie like that, I don't mind that. But I really like biopics that focus in on like one little
Like a month of this
like
guy's
chunk.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
oh, like there's the one with like Winston Churchill, The Darkest Hour or something, where it's like
Does that one do that?
it's not. Yeah, it just focuses on like the.
The D-Day.
No, it's like what happened at Dunkirk. It's like in like around that when like France is Poland is getting invaded and then France is trying to fight back. It doesn't cover like all of Winston Churchill's life. It's just like what he did at this one part.
That was Gary Oldman.
Yes, yeah, it was like before Pearl Harbor, so it was.
Like there was
before US was involved.
I want to say, was it Nicole Kidman or someone like that? There was a I Love Lucy biopic that Amazon did like a year or two ago, and it
I could
that-
see her playing that.
that one also was like I did not see it, but I know that it also just focuses in on like maybe a week of Lucille Ball's life, and I find that very interesting. Like Saving Mr. Banks is about P.L. Travers, author of Mary Poppins, coming to L.A. and
With Tom Hanks.
yep.
That's a good
Yeah.
movie.
So
That
it's like not
was-
about
hyper specific. Just this little.
exactly. It
just
wasn't about
Him
Walt
trying
Disney.
to get the rights to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic movie. I really like.
Yeah.
But did it do a good job, even though it was kind of broad?
It did, and without ruining it, there's really nothing ruined. But John Voight plays.
Did they bring the wall down? I want to know.
Well, spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
Spoiler.
The wall may have come down.
No. I'm not there yet.
So John Voight was in it, but I wasn't sure. Is he just going to do a quick little like cameo sort of thing? But no, John Voight. Yeah,
He's
he's
super red pill too.
he is, and for as old as he is, like he's dropping some good lines. You know, I don't know how you memorize lines at his age, but I guess you just do it. So he played like some sort of some Russian. I don't even know the term you'd
Mom said
use.
KGB, or was that the narrator?
He was like, what would the term be? Almost like part of the Russian, like main cabinet administration, kind of like an advisor to whoever was running the
Okay.
USSR at the time. So he went through, I don't know, 5 different Russian leaders before we got to guy with the
Gorbachev.
Gorbachev.
Gorbachev, I can't
with
even
the
say his
Fort
name.
Weinstein. And so it's really kind of him telling the story to this new upcoming Russian leader
Oh.
who's wanting to bring back communism, like the
So
former.
it's largely like it's like Forrest Gump.
It's like in his
flashback.
study with books. They're smoking cigars, and he's got like an old slide projector showing old photos. And he's like, you know, what really happened? He's like, well, Reagan happened. The guy's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, let me take you back. And he's like, you really need to understand his childhood, you know, who his father was, an alcoholic, but he was just a phenomenal storyteller. So that's where Reagan got his storytelling skills, right? And then his mother, who was just amazing and really just kept pushing him to be the man he needed to be. And
How much did it focus on his acting?
a lot, but more so his role as the what would be vice president of the Screen Actors Guild.
Yeah.
So spends a lot of time there. That's when he first came, head to head with communism, because the communists were trying to take over that union as well as pretty much all the unions in the U.S. through force. They bring baseball bats, and just beat people up, and that's how it was, So then they go through a lot of that, because then that is why he ended up, and so then he read a ton of books on communism, because he was a Democrat back in the day and was even toying around with socialism and communism lightly, like a lot of people do, until you really see it face to face and you realize it's all about just force and control. So then he really became a student of communism, and then that's why he really went after Russia, because he felt like they were the biggest threat. And so they built that up because that was important to his presidency. But it's basically the whole movie was about his fight against communism, taking down the wall, all of that. And I thought it was well done. Several of the scenes are shot there on, at his ranch in California, which everyone thinks like, oh, the Reagan Ranch, he was so wealthy. He was almost broke when it came time to run for president. And his house on the ranch, it's 1,100 square feet.
Nice.
Like, it's just
No
this
way.
little humble
Wow.
house. Like, the ranch is not fancy at all. But now it's a museum. So his wife lives 10 years after he died. So she turned the ranch basically into the Reagan Museum, and then there's a library and all of that. But I guess his clothes are still hanging in the closet.
Was it Andrea who brought this up? About how, he essentially had, left it, a certain way, past, and then they just kind of left the house as it was.
Yeah.
He was still expected to return home.
Yeah, I think he ended up having to go to, because he developed Alzheimer's. He still wanted to ride horses. They were concerned about that. And then at a certain point, they decided to move him to some sort of a care center. And I think the hope was that maybe he could come back and they could have maybe some
Oh, you lost it. That was such a good one, dude.
level of care there. And it just didn't happen. And so they didn't explain that much in the movie, but others talking about the movie, the producer and others, they've all said that. Which is why I guess his clothes are all still there. So they just left the ranch there for quite a long time, and then finally Nancy's like, well, let's just go ahead and make this part of the Reagan legacy and a museum. And so I'd love to go visit it. It's super cool.
Well, where is it?
I don't know.
Is it Southern California?
Like
I don't know the Reagan.
rolling fields with some trees, but it definitely doesn't look like Northern California. It's not like redwoods or anything.
Look
So
it up.
I don't
Jamie, look it up.
know. It's
Jamie, can you
near.
What is it called?
The Reagan Ranch.
It's near the ocean, like there's part of their property, which is why he bought it, because he had a film that was like near the bluffs, near the ocean, and he's like, I love it here, like this could be my home. And so later he ended up buying up this whole
Santa Barbara,
ranch.
California.
Santa Barbara.
I was gonna say there's probably 1,000 miles of coastline matches that description.
Yeah,
And,
right.
and where were you?
I was about a 2-hour drive north of Santa Barbara
Okay.
in San Luis Obispo County.
Okay. There's so many different counties of California.
California's
if you're from California,
huge.
you know.
You know it, yeah.
But when someone says oh, I'm from Oakland, I'm like, I don't have any frame of reference for what that means.
Yeah, right. And so
I'm from Bel Air. It's great. So is Will
Oakland
Smith.
is near San Francisco. Yeah, Bel Air is near Los Angeles.
Okay.
They're
I've been in Anaheim because I went to Disneyland twice. That's the most I've done.
Anaheim, so you're in Los
Well, yeah,
Angeles.
but it's
But no,
a
they
little chunk.
But San Francisco
They just seem
from
like the same thing.
to Los Angeles is 6-hour
Yeah.
drive.
From where to where?
From San Francisco to Los Angeles.
6 hours.
Yeah, I'm just throwing that out there.
I
yeah.
think so. It's
With
for-
traffic.
Six
With
to
the-
six
with
to
the
7 hours.
traffic.
No,
Because
just driving 70 miles an hour.
Because it's San Francisco's more northern, LA is the middle, and then San Diego's southern, I think.
Yeah, San
Well,
Diego
LA is
Southern.
pretty low,
Mhm.
all things considered. Yeah, Northern California is almost like a completely different place, right? Kind of culturally and vibe-wise.
Politically,
Yeah.
so it's different there.
In my experience, it's so much like Colorado, where most of California is more or less conservative,
Yeah.
but the big cities are super blue, and they just have like 5 Denvers.
Yeah. And they just control and run the state.
Yeah.
How much bigger is California than Colorado? A little more than
Like
twice.
square miles?
Yeah, like maybe twice as big.
I don't know, because
It's
it's not like Colorado's small.
No.
California's just long. I'm sure a resident smartphone guy,
Gotcha.
he's looking
Right
at
in.
it.
Colorado's pretty big. It's like
Colorado's huge.
because it's just a big block.
Yeah.
Nevada actually might be bigger than California. Nevada's
There's
huge.
just nothing here. There's really nothing in Nevada.
Well, because
Even
like
less in Wyoming, which is almost the exact same size as Colorado. It's not wild.
yes,
And it has like a population of, like the whole state's like 500,000 people.
Yeah.
it's 2 wolves and a moose up there.
2 wolves.
It's 3 wolves.
Oh.
Because one of them I think went up.
Dang it. No, like because California, it's actually one of the smaller states, but like the northern part
Just
is.
read us off the square
I don't know the
miles.
square mile. I'm just looking at a map
He's
right
just
now.
stalling.
I'm looking
while
at a
he's
map
looking
right
at-
now.
He's like, California,
looking
founded
at a
in
map right now. Siri.
17.
Okay, so is
I don't know if I'm buying it's one of the smaller states, but
Rhode Island is a small state.
all those East Coast states are small.
Alaska's ginormous.
I love how they started out like all like super tiny and just cut up, and then as you go,
They're just like, whatever.
big.
We're tired of all that.
Yeah.
all right. So
I think there are
Cal-
over 40 million people though now, right?
California has a land area of 155,000 square miles. Well,
155,000 square.
Yeah, and then Colorado has a surface area. I don't know how, that has a surface area of 104,000 square miles.
So they're real similar.
Oh, so
So
it's
it's a little
kinda
bigger.
It's kind of
Colorado's
close.
huge.
I don't know what.
Just what are we
land area
now?
and surface
6 to
area.
7 million people here,
Maybe.
The population.
and they have like 5 times that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably hard to go through like, pastoral California at this point, right? Like you're gonna come across like a lot of civilization going through any part of California.
Honestly, there's still a lot. I mean,
Think so?
yeah. I'll have to shoot some video because I'm gonna go there for a month in October,
Okay.
and I'm going home. So I'll spend, if there's any chance of the pastoral thing, like I'll be there.
Look, a field.
Because, yeah, I mean, my town is still smaller than Grand Junction, population-wise.
Did they have a lot of agriculture over there?
Yeah, more than, I want to say anywhere else in the U.S., honestly.
Really?
What's up, Oliver?
Less
Um,
and less, but still, yeah. 'Cause I
Yeah.
know water rights are getting gobbled up, and orange growers and everyone else is basically selling their land.
That's the thing, like all those places, Orange County is named after, like, orange groves, as
Yeah.
far as I understand.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure, like, I read some stat where it was like basically it like feeds the rest of the country roughly.
Right.
Did I think of like corn?
Like
I think of like the Midwest.
the coal. Yeah, I don't remember a lot of corn,
I'm sure there's a lot of grapes. You got the grapes
a lot
in
of grape,
California.
a lot of like fruits and agricultural land.
Lots of greens too, right? Like lettuces and
Well, you think it's got like a Mediterranean climate, a lot of it. Well, it has every climate too. That's one of the weird. I mean, there's a reason like why California is like, dun, dun, dun,
really
like
takes up
the
like
Golden State. Like we all hate it now politically
2/3 of the
'Cause-
side of the country.
because every parasite in the world has tried to go there. But you can grow anything,
yeah,
and their seasons is like massive as far as
right.
how long you can grow stuff.
You got oranges, you got grapes, avocados.
It's long, so like if there's stuff that grows in a southern climate, like you can reach, you're heading towards the equator, no, really, but you're heading towards Mexico.
And you got
But you can,
avocados
you're
down
heading
there.
towards, you're heading north. I mean, so you've got, we're like here, it's like if it doesn't grow in this kind of like whatever latitude, then like,
Yeah.
you're stuck.
Yeah,
We're good at peaches, corn,
Used to be
How
apples
much does-
until the apple borer
How much of
came
California
in.
land is
It batted
ag?
down like the 20s or 30s, and we just didn't handle it right, and so we kind of lost the status of apple capital. So now it's Yakima, Washington. Yeah.
See, so this says of California's approximately 100 million acres of land, 43 million acres are used for agriculture.
So just below half.
Yeah, so it's
Wow.
a lot.
That is a lot.
It's a lot.
There used to be a giant lake in the kind of the central part of the state. Have you seen that? And they drained
Used
it.
to be? They drained it?
In the, I don't know, 1800s, they drained it.
I believe it.
They cut in a canal or something and drained it into the ocean. And then that created a really fertile area because there's just so much
bet, yeah.
organic material there. And I couldn't even tell you exactly where, if there's like cities there and everything else now. But
I find screwing with the terrain and stuff like that so fascinating with how people are able to like more or less like kind of craft the land.
especially back in the day, like New Orleans, like it's mostly like below sea level.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
And they got whatever they call them, what do they call them? Not dams, but
They don't have dikes? Is
it dikes?
I know
They've
in
done the
Holland,
same thing in Holland.
Yeah, Holland, the dikes are kind of famous, and they're below sea level.
Yep, and they pump water out, but they've got like several layers of protection. Whereas like
They
New
call
Orleans,
them
like
blocks or something. Like
I've watched videos on. It's fascinating, and like engineers back in the day like came up with all that, and figured it out.
it's really, yeah.
They got me thinking about Rome again.
Something. No, I read a book called Cadillac Desert, and it was all about how they made LA into a place where you could have that big of a population.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like Colorado River is like the main one, but they rerouted all these different rivers to be able to feed that region. And they're just like, because their premise was like, this is like a massive sprawling metropolis that should not exist because it's just a desert.
Yep. So,
And
Yeah.
even driving out there, like right up until you get in there, it's like the Death Valley and all that.
gosh.
It's like, how the heck is this
Yeah.
here?
yeah.
Have you seen the like Mississippi River tributaries map? Like all of the
Not as
different-
just a specific one for that, but there's like 1,000,000, 1,000 of them or something.
Dude, it covers. Let me pull this up. It covers way more real estate than you might realize. Just the tributaries of the river.
By the way, I've got limes and club soda and tonic if you're interested.
Yeah.
Cut through the sugar a
Really?
little bit.
I want, even if you don't drink it, I want you to take one of the Noritos.
Okay. Thank you. I'll probably drink it after this.
Mississippi River tributaries.
Yeah, I was chatting with Marty Chazen,
Marty.
and he grew up in, I think, Orange County. It's kind of where he grew up, back 60s. And he's like, man, it was just like no homeless people.
Where was he at? You did?
I thought he said Orange County. But he's like,
Probably.
orange groves everywhere, very low crime, just beautiful little neighborhoods, ride your bike anywhere you want to go. Oh my God.
And I don't know how they vote now, but
It's like a disease. Look at
even
this.
when I lived out there,
That's the tributaries of the Mississippi River.
like the whole country.
Yeah, I know.
What is it?
That's the Mississippi River
They
and
were
its
known
tributaries.
for being like really conservative in Orange County.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Um,
is that creeping into Colorado? Is that Colorado on the edge?
I think that is Colorado, right? Yeah, like that's New Mexico.
What?
Yeah.
What parts of that would be creeping in, I wonder?
I mean, we got a pretty thick line coming right into like it's probably only like a few hundred miles away from us, the Mississippi River. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Speaking of, so way off topic, Marty, did you say his name Chazen?
Chazen.
Chazen. He saw one of my kids' videos online that I like post,
Yeah, those are great.
and it was of my 5-year-old like pulling apart like a router. So I was just like, oh, this doesn't work. I'll throw it away, but like take it apart.
Yeah.
He saw
He
that,
doesn't appreciate it.
and he reached out and he's like, hey, what's your
He's not over there
address?
crying.
And he sent us
Okay.
like a kid's like my first electronic set or whatever.
wow.
And it's like it's like with magnets, but like every wire and resistor, whenever they're just like a strip, like a plastic strip with the real deal inside, and then magnets on each side. So like the magnets, instead of like soldering, you just kind of like magnet it one wire to the next.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And so you can build and rebuild like with ease. And
Right.
he's like, hey, your kid has a interest in this. He's like, I grew up loving. I guess he teaches at the college, right? Yeah, I've always known him, but I didn't, he was like, yeah, it's like an adjunct or something. I teach like electrical engineering or something. And he's like, my first love of this started with like this type of a thing. And he just sent it to us. He's like, have fun. So like, that is so cool. We got it like 2 weeks ago.
That is so cool. Investing in your kids.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Growing up, I had a book called like 101 Science Experiments. I used that book so much, the spine fell off. And it was all kinds of stuff, everything from, like oil and water separating and things like that, to like electronic stuff, like, potato batteries and all that.
Yes.
And one of them was using I ended up getting like a lot of wire, like insulated wire that mom and dad would buy for me. I don't know where they bought it, Hobby Lobby, I don't know. But I had a bunch of insulated wire. I'd snip the ends off, wrap the wire around like a 9-volt battery. And I learned about electromagnetism and how you could take a screwdriver and wrap the wires around and like attach to a battery, and now all of a sudden the screwdriver was magnetized. Dad was pissed.
Oh, really?
Because I magnetized all of his screwdrivers.
Yes.
So every time he would pull a screwdriver out of the junk drawer, it was covered in paper clips and fasteners and stuff like that.
Yes.
But I love that kind of stuff because it was a safe.
So cool.
It was like a relatively safe way to experiment with like current and power and like it's fascinating stuff.
I'm not going to blow the house up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now it's kind of cool as my 11-year-old, I bought him like a soldering thing for Christmas. And he was kind of like, well, what am I going to do with this?
No.
And I kind of forced him to just like take some stuff apart and solder it back together.
Yeah.
And he got into it while I kind of pushed him, but it was kind of like, oh, well, okay. And then got busy. And then my wife, he has like an electric pencil sharpener. And for whatever reason, he's like, that's his like pride and joy. It's like pencil sharpener.
Those are pretty cool.
He brings it like everywhere. And my wife like moved, she dropped it and broke it.
Yeah.
Like broke the pieces apart. But so he's like, oh, I want to put it back together. And one of the wires was like pulled out. And he's like, hey, like that thing you were showing me. And so he went and he like soldered the wire back together. And I was like, oh yeah,
That's cool.
I've soldered one thing in my life, and I was like, it felt so wrong because I'm like, I'm breaking this. Like I think it was just adding something to a board, and like I melt it and it just like fuses in and it worked.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird feeling to be like, I felt like I just broke something by like melting it, and I fixed it and it works. That's cool.
Isn't that so cool?
It is so cool.
Oliver likes doing experiments. I need to get a book like that so we can just do, some basic stuff. Like we've done, like you take a chicken egg, put it in vinegar for like 3 days, and then all the calcium comes out, and then you put it in a thing of water, and then it starts to get bigger because of osmosis, right? It's going towards the concentration gradient, and he thinks that stuff is super cool. And
There was a like a VHS tape that I've gotten from the library that also had like its own set of science experiments, and it started with like this collage grid of like 16 still images. It zoomed in on the first one, and that was the first experiment. And then it would zoom back out and then go back to the second one.
Yeah.
And I found it on YouTube. If I can find it again, I'll put it in the group chat. But like I lived and died by that tape.
yeah, that's cool.
And I was like, I'm gonna do all of these experiments.
That's so cool.
Even making like a little like barometer out of like a soda bottle to like measure air pressure.
Yeah.
Like a couple weather ones were in there, and it's cool. Cool stuff. I dug that.
Yes. That's really fun.
And I that was a very big part of my childhood, was that kind of like creativity combined with like the science, the unveiling of the world around me, and like I want my kids to also be able to have that, so I'm trying to be proactive about it. making sure that they get that experience too. 'Cause
Yeah,
I can
that's
tell
fun.
that they have the same curiosity.
Yeah.
I want to feed that.
When I was about, I think probably 9 or 10, Uncle Mike gave Mike and I, my older brother, gave Mike and I his chemistry set that he had from when he was a kid. It was just, he had held on to all that. So it's like this really big thing. You open it up, right? There's like a book in there, experiments, and then just rows and rows of these little vials of just different stuff. Going through the book, it's like, here's how to make gunpowder. So there's like saltpeter and charcoal and sulfur. And like looking back, it's like,
That's badass, man. That's so good.
you know, I'm like making this stuff out in the garage and could have literally blown
Coulda
stuff
killed
up. Yeah.
yourself.
They don't make chemistry sets like that anymore.
And the whole like stereotype of in like the movies and TV shows of the kid like mixing two wrong things and
Yep.
blows up.
There's like some recipe to make like a really stinky gas or something, and sure enough, you mix
Sulfur.
it together, and then all of a sudden it starts off gassing, which is like clears the room. You know.
Like our garage episode.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That was epic.
We learned the hard way, huh? I thought it would be okay. Apparently not.
It's fine now,
It's fine now.
but man, it smelled like a stogie for about a month.
You you said you had a ghost story. We got way off track.
Oh yeah.
It's not super important, but
That's right. I like the spooky times.
someone gave us a book, Colorado Ghost Stories.
It's pretty big.
Apparently award-winning author. So
It's pretty thick book too.
I've got another one in there, which is like weird legends and stories from Colorado, but supposedly they're all true. I thumbed through that. Not as interesting. But this one's cool because it's lines out. Go to the contents. It's like it's alphabetical order, so like Aspen, Black Canyon of the Gunnison, Canyon City, Carbondale, Castle. It just goes all the way through. And so I look. Sure enough, there's one for Grand Junction. But
Just one?
just one.
Just one.
Which there's definitely more than that.
Sure.
I've thought about like, wouldn't that be kind of fun to like go out and interview people and get their stories and then like put it into a book? You know, not that I have time for all of that, but it'd be.
That's one of my fantasies too, is do that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I have
Just
a
collect stuff.
friend, an acquaintance that used to be law enforcement, and then he and I went through the leadership program of the Rockies together. And he's no longer law enforcement, but I think he runs like a security company up in Montana somewhere. But he and I got together a couple times, and he told some pretty crazy ghost stories of him like going and getting called to a house because there's like screams inside and all this stuff. So him and his partner go in and open the door, and all of a sudden just feel this rush of wind, and they feel like something just passes right through them. And they hear all these screams. They're like, "We're out of here." There's like a bunch of stories like that. And recently he became a MUFON investigator. So,
Bless you.
yeah, exactly. Mutual UFO Network. And so it's a nationwide thing. It's been around.
MUFON.
I think so.
Okay.
But you can apply to be an investigator. And so if anyone has a UFO encounter, they can go on to MUFON, I guess.com, I don't know, and report it. And then a local investigator will come out.
He's Mulder.
David Duchovny will come out.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is.
So cool.
And they'll take your story down and take any evidence you have, and I guess
And put it in this database and
see how credible it is, and then
Men
see
in
if
Black wipe your memory.
I know, right? And then wipe your
flashy
memory.
thingy.
Yeah. So he said he's been doing that, and if you can prove yourself to be a fairly good investigator, which he was a cop that did that. He says now he's risen to the level of. I just actually asked him, I think yesterday, because I heard he was doing that. I'm like, is it fun? Are you enjoying it, or is it just like wackadoo stuff? And he's like, they take it very seriously. If you're a fairly good investigator, then you'll get better and better, like encounters and cases, up to the level of now he's interviewing people that think they've been abducted.
Whoa.
Yeah, which to the level like sometimes even law enforcement needs to come in.
Like FBI level stuff. Huh?
Yeah, and I guess we don't have any MUFON people here in Grand Junction. There's a lot in the state though, so I'm like,
Are you gonna start a chapter?
I'm
or
not
whatever?
really into UFOs much, you know.
We gotta change that name though.
It's weird.
Like, yeah, I work for MUFON.
I get the acronym now, but like, yeah.
Then there's the BFRO, which is the Bigfoot Research Organization, also nationwide. and you can apply to be one of those. Which again, you basically just
That's more your speed. Is that it?
It is, but if you get into the Bigfoot space, like there's Bigfoot researchers that are like BFRO, it's a North American great ape, and it's nothing else. Like there's no paranormal. We don't
Which would
accept
be
that.
significant enough.
Right. But like even if you show up and the person's like, oh yeah, I saw these flying orbs around in the forest, and all of a sudden Bigfoot was there, and then a UFO came down and like beamed up a tree, they're like, nope, just ask about the Bigfoot, and that's all you're going to report on.
Oh, I see.
So I'd have trouble with that, 'cause it's like,
So
oh,
like, we don't like the MUFOs here.
Right.
It's like the law enforcement agencies, like the FBI hates the CIA, hates
Yep.
Okay.
and they're like,
Of course.
it's a natural ape that just somewhere came off of the,
The land bridge.
Homo sapien sapien line, and but then there's others that are like, I think Bigfoot are interdimensional beings that have been around since before humans. So those camps
your
don't
name on
agree
it?
at all.
Oh,
So I
wow.
thought about getting into
So
the
they-
BFRO
they-
thing, but it's like it's like a cult.
You'd have to, yeah,
Yeah.
I can't even think.
But the MUFON thing, I would consider doing it, if only for the experience of investigating and trying to take like an
Interesting
unbiased account and story, kind of taking out some of the riffraff, and then just writing it out as a report
Do it, why
and
not?
submitting it. I might do it. Like, I guess you get a whole ID and everything with like your picture on there. And
You've been more in this space than I have, so you probably have more of a attentiveness to this. How many people in these like fringe spaces, like UFOs or Bigfoot or anything like that, are actually like logical, credible people doing like unbiased research and investigation versus like the kooks who want it to be real, so
Right.
they have a wider net of evidence they're willing to accept to support their view. You know what I mean?
I do. I would say it's probably, everyone's biased, and there's always bias in everything we do. So I'll just put that out there. And I would say most people that they're doing like the Bigfoot research stuff,
It's already conspiratorial in nature, so
they've probably already had an experience that attracted them to that.
sure.
So that's, it's kind of baked into the cake. I don't think you'd have a ton of people that are in MUFON that maybe haven't seen a UFO or know someone that did. It's possible.
But why would they be interested?
Why would they be interested? Same thing with BFRO, unless you're just I really want to see a Bigfoot and I really want to do this. Like, that's possible. But they're already going to have a bias towards, I think these things exist, I really want them to exist.
Yeah. Is it maybe less, why would they be interested? Because in some way, most people find that interesting,
Yeah.
but
To put
you'd have to
time into it?
to get past the social like stigma shaming thing. You'd have to have a real like experiential dog in that fight type of a thing.
And once you put like devote part of your life to it, then
Because like you or me
people
is like,
will
oh,
judge
I
you.
think that's interesting. I'll read a little bit about it. I won't really tell people I respect too much, but I wouldn't go out there because as soon as I go out there, as soon as I get ridiculed, I'm like, yeah, you're right, that's dumb.
Yeah.
Unless it's like, no, I've seen one of these,
Right.
and that's changed. I don't care what you think
Yeah.
now.
And I think there's actually a lot of people in that space. Well, even the missing 4-in-1 guy,
Oh, I love them.
Dave Pilates. He's former law enforcement out of California. He did complex investigations. And so that's how he's approached the missing 4-in-1 thing. All these people that go missing, where there's, a lot of different situations that all align. There's a weather event, there's a point of separation from their group. It's near
They
granite
made Orange Crush
rock
after
fields,
this,
which is
that's all.
weird. Water's nearby. Like, he's got all of his criteria. A weather event happened just around that time, and they were them going missing strange, and usually for the most part they've never been found. Canines put on the trail, they can't find any scent ever at all. Anyway. So David Pilates, he takes that approach, but you'll never hear him say, "I think a UFO took him." He's like, "I'll just tell you the evidence and you decide." So that all of his, so he's written all these books, and it's all from an
Very little opinion.
Is it
Almost
because
no opinion.
does he do that? I could see doing that on purpose to avoid any type of whatever, or does he never get enough evidence to form a really hypothesis?
There was enough evidence that his final movie was called, well, I don't know if it's his final, but his last movie was called Missing 411, The UFO Connection.
Okay.
And he says there's been enough evidence, eyewitness evidence, that there has been UFO, things happening where they pick up elk or cows out of fields, and people have actually witnessed this. And then that happening around a lot of these missing people things that he thinks there's maybe correlation. Like, again, he's not saying that UFOs are going around nabbing people out of the woods all the time, but there's enough evidence there that he's been able to kind of put all that together. But again, you're not going to hear him say like, oh, for sure, like the family that were missing up on a mesa, there was a UFO that nabbed them, unless there's eyewitnesses that saw a UFO nab the family. So I really appreciate that, and I think you'll find that in a lot of these organizations. There's people that take it very seriously. They've learned how to be good investigators. Even Melba Ketchum, she's written several books. She's written some white papers.
Melba Toast.
Yeah. So she got together with a bunch of these groups that supposedly think that they've gotten hair from Bigfoot, like stuck on fences. They're out doing wood knocks, they hear a creature, they hear it running through the woods, and they go, and sure enough, there's like hair hanging off of a.
Did they do like DNA tests?
Barbed wire
So then they
fence or
take it, they're doing DNA testing, and supposedly, if it's a Bigfoot, there's not going to be this inner core like humans have in their hair, or deer have, or elk. So it's missing this core out of the middle of the hair. And then they take that, they do DNA testing, and most of the results say they can kind of look the female and then the male genetics there. Female looks like it's human, and then the male is unknown. Which, man, that starts to make you think about like Nephilim or something. It's like
Yeah.
angelic dad, human mom. I don't know, but she's taken it very seriously. She's published all of her results. Dave Paulides did too. He did a whole DNA study, wrote it all up. So there's very serious people in that, and then I think I think they'll boot you out if you're kind of a wackadoo or you're trying to force evidence or force something.
Which is good because, like I say, fringe stuff, where you're already kind of like a social pariah in some sense if you ascribe to that, which is unfortunate because I think that we should entertain anything and everything rationally. But when it comes to that kind of stuff, I could see it being like easily just a bunch of kooks and just people who are serious trying to give their best.
Sure.
But it's actually kind of surprising to hear that it's like largely a very grounded group of people who kind of dismiss anyone who doesn't want to take it as seriously as they would any other kind of science.
Like there's a guy up in, I think he's in Idaho or Washington. He's a professor. His name's eluding me. It'll probably pop in my head. But he has the world's largest collection of what they consider to be Sasquatch castings. So you see a big footprint impression in the forest, you pour a plaster of Paris in there, and then you lift it, you've got an impression. And it's he's a tenured professor. I think he's an anthropologist, I think is how he teaches, but he actually has a class on like, I don't even know what the class would be called, it's a scientific term I'm sure, but for looking at foot impressions of different animals, including Bigfoot out in the wild, to where there's like this mid-tarsal break, they call it, so where our foot bends when we walk, theirs is different. They don't have an arch, their foot's a lot more flat. How their toes look, like the whole thing, the width based on the length, there's always a ratio that matches. And again, you think, someone's probably hoaxing that. Well, he's got hundreds and hundreds of these casts, like all in his office. You can go into his lab.
From a disparity of locations.
Yeah, all across the U.S. And he's a really sharp guy. He's well respected, but he's probably one of the only, like, if you call him legit scientists that's tenured at a university that's actually talking about all of this. That there's enough evidence to suggest there's some type of, Gigantopithecus ape or something in North America that just hides really well.
I have a hypothetical.
Yeah.
do you think that if more people took it seriously and it wasn't so much of like a cultural joke, that actual progress could be made on discovering more information?
Yeah. So I listen to Sasquatch Chronicles, which is a podcast. And the guy does a really good job. He just brings someone on, tees it up, and then lets them talk for like 45 minutes and then closes it out. So he doesn't get in and editorialize or anything. And I've probably listened to 150 episodes now. So many of these individuals are, you know, former or current law enforcement, and they're just like, there's no way I could tell my department about what I saw. So I've kind of held on to this for 10 years. I just needed to get it out. He's like, I can't tell you who I am or even what department I worked at because I'm still currently employed. Or they'll be former military. They're like there was a guy on there the other day. He's like, yeah, so my 50 years has run its course, and so now what I'm going to share with you is no longer classified. Stuff like that. It's like tons of these weird sightings of military bases. And, you know, they're brought into a room. Everything you saw is classified. You can't talk about it to anybody, anywhere. And then they have to sign basically a non-disclosure deal that expires in 30 years. So there's a ton of stuff like that. And I think just for the average Joe, you know, you're out in the forest and all of a sudden you see this thing on two legs and it's 10 feet tall, walking through the forest, and it looks at you, and who are you going to tell? Without being completely ridiculed or just laughed at. And so I think there's, if you want to believe in such things, I think there's a lot of experience like that just never get reported. People don't know who to tell, you know, what to tell. It's just like with the UFO disclosure now, if all these, you know, the tic-tac phenomenon and the minutes, you know, aircraft carrier, all that stuff's being put out there now, which, you know, you can hypothesize why the government all of a sudden decides we need to know this. But same thing, like these military individuals, like, I know you saw something weird, but we're not going to talk about it, and we're just going to keep it a hush-hush. Or if you say something, they're just like, nope, we don't believe you. And same thing with pilots, like airline pilots. There's a group now that's working with Congress to try to create, not a whistleblower, but basically a reporting opportunity for FAA pilots to be like, hey, I was flying a plane, something weird went by the plane. I don't know who to tell because I try to tell my higher ups, and they're like, no, we're not listening to you, or that can't be true, or we don't talk about that stuff. Now they've got a place where they can actually go and report it without judgment, without reprisal, any of that. So I think all that world's changing now, which I think is good. But even so, there's just going to be those, you know, naysayers, and that's fine. I mean, I still don't know exactly what I think of all that stuff.
Sure. I feel like in the internet age and like the Joe Rogan age and whatever you want to call it, I think that a lot of people in the West are open to considering stuff like this, except for like civilians in like the left-leaning metro areas, where it's
Interesting.
they're just honestly not as much of free thinkers.
In general, yeah.
Yeah.
They would think they are. They would say that they are.
They just go by, you know, the status quo
Right.
of the city that they live in.
Yeah.
Well, because all that, all the political phenomenon, it's all, to me, it's one big meta
Yes.
phenomenon.
Yes.
But I haven't heard anyone talk about it in those terms, and I haven't come up with a coherent theory on how to talk about it. But it's all the same thing.
Like a Trump supporter would probably be more willing to entertain a conspiracy theory than, you know, a left-leaning, mindless Kamala voter in a metro city.
Right.
And like that's just the truth.
Something about
Whether that's good or bad is another discussion.
the NPC, the programmed, because you see it in the less fringe sciences too, like in archaeology. You find something that you weren't supposed to find,
Yep.
and you're out.
Yep.
It's not even like this shouldn't exist in this layer,
Right.
because we have what we think is like an exhaustive model of the universe, and we're committed to it. Our culture's committed to it.
And the model should not dictate the science that you get.
Yeah, but
Right?
right, we're just in a spot right now it's not even that old of a time where we're committed to this model, and so the Overton window is like, you can talk about anything inside here, and if it's outside the model, they like slap your hand. And that's where you get everything from the UFOs and the Bigfoot to how certain economic theories work to, you know, the Smithsonian hiding artifacts in a warehouse. And I think it's all the same thing, but it's hard to picture, like, what is that? Is it just what were they calling it? Remember back in COVID, what was the mental mass
formation, psychosis.
Yeah.
There's several different terms tossed around, but that was the one.
It's not like a boardroom where they decide it, but for some reason, like as humans, we all can adopt at once, as if we're all cells in one massive organism, adopt a certain mindset, and then we cannot deal with.
Well, it's like a mob mentality.
Yeah, and it's just this stupid model we have that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and the rock layers and the tectonic plates and we all know it, like some cores, like that's kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
But it's a game we play.
I think academia is partly, if not mostly, to blame for a lot of that, because you figure, and I've heard others talk about this as well,
Kind of where politics and science met.
Yeah, and so in academia, this is what's acceptable. Everyone, you get your tenure, you've written your white papers, you've written a textbook now.
Yeah.
That's in its 4th version. You're making a lot of money on that. And you've been lecturing on these things. Now all of a sudden there's a bit of science that comes out that contradicts all that. What are you going to do? Most people are going to revert back to their priors and not accept the new science or the new data because, but my textbook says something different. And I've told 10,000 students something different. And it's unfortunate, but I think where we would expect like the best science to happen in academia, it's not happening because I think there's so much, we've just got to cling to our old beliefs and our old understandings. Like you said, I mean, there's evidence now of like a charred, layers. I think it was out in Utah where it looks like thousands of years ago the earth was literally scorched, whether that was a meteorite that hit, like they were talking about the Younger Dryas, kind of catastrophe hypothesis that maybe a meteorite hit, northern US into Canada, melted this mile thick glacier causing a worldwide flood, but it also scorched a lot of North America too.
That's what's interesting is...
But that's new data, that's new science that's coming out, and the academics are like, nope, I won't even look at it, we won't even consider it.
It is, and that's the one place
unscientific.
you'd think they'd be excited to find something new. And no, like they've decided like this is the narrative, and it's just what it is.
And you'll be laughed at by all your colleagues. It's really unfortunate.
It's just sad because that's why, I feel like it sounds cynical, and there are ways to get out of it.
Yeah.
But in some ways, like this civilization's either run its course or it's in a stagnant because we're not willing. So we're either gonna slowly just fizzle out, and another civilization will rise up, and eventually they'll say, "Wow, did you know that this and this, and we've had these for a long time?"
Yeah.
What was the stinking, the ancient Americans used to think this.
Yeah.
I guess I fully expect them to be like, yeah, they made some great contributions, and then they just kind of like
Quit.
they just quit.
Something I thought of when you were saying this. Couple things. This fringe science, Bigfoot, UFOs, whatever it is, not necessarily a whole lot of money in it. So why spend time with it? Also, it challenges your secular worldview. So also why, the Overton window is literally just like set on that one scientific model.
Right.
that is trying so desperately to cling on to
Yeah.
any excuse to explain away God, right?
Yep. I think that's, at the end of the day, like, that's what it is.
Yep.
Because they'll find all kinds of, like, wow. Because there's a lot, you're right, there's a lot of dudes that are like, look, a worldwide flood from aliens that all got together and spit at us with straws, and there were so many of them that flooded. And you're just like, goodness, you're trying so hard to just avoid the obvious.
Yeah.
Can I share my personal opinion on the whole evolution versus creationism thing?
Please do.
So,
You Molinist, you.
my alternative Christian worldviews. So for the longest time, the church never really had like a strong opinion on how old
Dates and stuff.
the dates and stuff. They didn't care. Like there were even some Catholic thinkers that did like put it in the ballpark of millions of years. Like it did not matter. And then I think once Darwin hit and the theory of that kind of unguided evolution showed up, and so many people in the culture kind of took to that as the secular gospel, like, oh, finally, here's the alternative to religion. I think that the Christians tried to counter that by literally just inverting it and saying, like, no, our God created everything and did it this far back, because following that chronology. And that's kind of where it's been since. I'm of the camp where it's like, if it's been 7,000 years or 13 point whatever billion, I don't care. Either could be true, in my opinion. Like, I think that you could read Genesis and, you know, the whole definition of yom being a day or an era, all that stuff, like, fine. I don't care. Because I don't think it matters. And I think it's just like a red herring and just smoke screen stuff that is just getting in the way of Christians versus non-Christians. That's my personal opinion. So whenever I hear someone get really hung up on, like, oh, they're teaching that it's millions of years, it's like, I don't think that really matters as much as you might think it does. Because I think that it comes from a place of
It's just reactionary.
Back and forth.
I get it.
Your T-shirt makes me think about. Did you guys go to the Ark Encounter?
No, my in-laws went, and my mother-in-law bought this for me, but I'd really like to. And they would have a lot of things to say to you about that.
Sure.
Ken Ham is like hardcore in that.
But that's not like a make it or break it deal for me. And so many people are still hung up on that, and I'm like, that's a red herring. That shouldn't matter.
I feel like it can go both ways in the sense where there's not really as much evidence as you'd think that the Earth's that old.
At least not on Earth.
Yeah,
Because
not on Earth.
They talk about, like, when it gets to like the 13 billion or whatever, that's like speed of light.
Yeah, so
stars
the
and
Earth's
stuff.
supposed to be 4.5 billion years old.
Something like that.
The universe is 13.
Yeah.
But there's really just not that much credible evidence for it. And a lot of the ways we measure stuff is not very credible.
No.
But our model's that, so we just kind of go with it. I'm with you that it wasn't considered as big of a deal until everyone tried to say, well, it's decided it's super old, therefore no God. And my view is almost backwards, where when I run into Christians that think it's really old, or will try to lean that way, I often think it's more of a sellout-y move of, like, they're tired of being ridiculed for believing something that science has disproven. So then you just kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess there probably are 3 genders, and I think Jesus probably referenced that. It's just the Greek is ambiguous. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
If you came up with 3 genders in the 5th century, I'd respect you, because it'd be tough to sell that.
Yeah.
But if you're in 2024 and you discovered that, you know, in the Greek it really meant something that is identical, would make you really popular with the culture here, I'm like, you're punking out. But I don't. That's not arguing your position. Yours, my only criticism would be, I think there's probably more implications for the rest of Scripture than we might think. Because there's many more references to, like, say, literal 6 days than just in Genesis.
Sure.
And, like, Paul references it and Jesus references it. So they'd all have to be wrong, or we'd have to be wrong every time we've interpreted what they're saying, or something like that.
Well, like, so I would say that you could, not that I ascribe to this.
Granted, we're extrapolating. I mean, we're trying to, like, do some crude math based on, like, a lot of genealogies and stuff to try to come up with, like, the 6,000 to 7,000 year thing.
Right.
And that could be way off.
Right. Yeah, there definitely is, like, gaps and, you know,
Yeah.
assumptions in that, but, like, whatever. As far as the thing about 6 days of creation, 1 day of rest, like, you could also, again, not that I ascribe to this, but, like, you could see it as just like a model or a pattern of 6 separate instances of work followed by 1 day of rest.
Like units.
Yeah, and technically, according to Hebrews, we are still in that last day of rest. That has not ended. God is still in his rest from creation. So some people have interpreted it to just be like a reflection on how God worked, and then instills it into the human calendar of days. But, like, the thing about just mentioned it, what was it, the woke people trying to,
I said 3 genders or something.
yeah, so with the thing about, like, creation is, I don't feel like it really endangers your faith at all.
Oh.
Like, at a core doctrine level, because, like, there's so many different theories of, like, well, maybe the universe is very old, but then recently God formed Earth and our solar system out of the chaos. It's like, that's all fine.
Because the idea that the Bible's an exhaustive encyclopedia
Genesis is not a science
of all
book.
existence,
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
is not true, because God kind of gives you what you need to know. And there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff going, like your Nephilim thing is, like, he mentions it, like, there's stuff going on here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing, but, like, I'm really focused on this. You're like, wait a minute, what was that? It's
What
like,
was that?
It's like, that's later, you know. And so you're like, okay, a lot more is going on that we don't know about.
I think people put too much weight on Genesis to support how they view the world and its origin. Because I think that, like, Genesis, I read it, it is historic in nature, but it's also kind of like mythic. There's like a poetry in it. And for me to say exactly what that means when it's like one of, you know, talking about the beginning of the universe, I just don't have any credibility to do that. So, and it's more of like feeling of, I don't want people to get hung up on that to be like a hurdle for them accepting Christ, because I don't think it needs to be.
And I think that can come later as well. I kind of equate that to, like, the, you know, is there going to be a rapture or not? Like, man, some Christians, like, if they have to give up the rapture,
Beginning of the
they're
Bible,
they're
end
giving
of
up
the Bible.
their faith. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm definitely more prone to saying, like, that doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Because if you're, you know,
Exactly.
quote unquote doing what you're supposed to be doing,
Right.
it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Exactly. We have all the assurance we need in the stuff that's
I
already
guess I more
happened.
mean is whenever I see, and maybe it's hard to pinpoint, like, the logic of, like, this and then this and then this, but whenever you see people that are trying to ultimately pull you away from Christ anyway, at the end of the day, they start with trying to discredit Genesis, trying to discredit the virgin birth, and trying to discredit, like, the resurrection.
Yeah.
And once you get some of those to kind of fall, then you can be like, well, if I don't know what the Bible's talking about here, I don't know what it's talking about anywhere. And it's all mythic and stories and blah, blah, blah.
And Genesis was sort of written at the time to kind of be like a clear depiction of what happened in contrast to all these other creation myths that were going on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when you learn what it was written for, that's kind of how we should process it, rather than just, like, being like, oh, this is my ammo to show the Darwinists that they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of how I feel about it. It's just, it's the context and the time frame and the reasoning is all...
Yeah, one of the most
wonky.
compelling things I'd read about, and I was like, duh, about like refuting the idea of 6 prolonged eon type things. And again, this is like if you want to stay a Christian. So this means you hold to all these other ideas about how death entered the scene, all those things, is the idea that God created primitive whatevers and used like eons of like Darwinistic refining and survival of the fittest stuff to arrive at like man, and then the story starts, but this has been happening for millions of years, is from a Christian perspective, like where did death come from? Because that's a very good point. That's how the refining process is you and me show up and you're sexier than me, so you get the girl, and I just kind of die off, and then you're lying. So that's not how the Bible describes our relationship to death at all. Mm-hmm. And so if the mainstream Christian model of 6 days is wrong, then you can't mix in the Darwinistic model and try to shoehorn that into this 6 days or 6 eon thing, because there's something missing about our understanding how that works. Because our understanding is that nothing was ever going to die until sin entered, and sin entered through Adam and Eve. So how would the Darwinistic model have ever taken place?
I agree with that.
And maybe that's even sort of a separate issue if you're looking at just age of the Earth. Do you have to plug in Darwinian evolution into that to make it all work? Or could a Christian say the Earth was formless originally? So
just for a long time.
There's something here for a long time.
But then no living organisms for...
Right, but then there was no light. He created light, but he was light too. He hovered over the waters. What was he doing when he was hovering over the waters? A lot of people talk about sound, frequencies,
language in Genesis that, like, I have no idea what it means.
Yeah, and I've heard people try to scientifically explain what's being said in Genesis, and it's like, that's interesting. I was talking to Bob Galley. I think he's retired now. He's on the Pregnancy Center board. But they went to the Ark Encounter last week, 2 weeks ago, him and his wife. And spent like 2 days there. He said at one point in his life, he kind of adopted the idea that maybe the Earth isn't as young as we think it is. Maybe there were some evolutionary things, some processes that happened naturally through some natural selection and whatnot. And it was kind of just trying to fit Christianity with a lot of science that's coming at you from, academia. And then he's like, after the Ark Encounter, he's like, no question in my mind. Young Earth, this is how it works. They've got artifacts there that's like a mortar and pestle that's like kind of fused into this rock. And they've tested the rock, and it's like 3 billion years old.
That's
and he's
more...
like there's like a hammer and chisel, like stuff that's in material, but there's no way it could be in that because the material it's in is supposed to be so ancient and so old, and so it kind of blows the whole carbon dating out of the water. And
that's what really got me is when I was much younger, I was dead set on archaeology and or paleontology. And when you really dig into how we date things, they just don't actually work.
Yeah.
And even if there's no way to test that they work, but we can test that they're wrong. Like we can see things like that. And it's so not credible that to me I'm just like, there's no way you convince me. I mean, we don't have, maybe it is old, but we don't have any evidence that it's old. Our evidence is, I want to say, made up.
Even carbon dating, it's There's a lot of academics that are kind of getting away from it because even with Mount St. Helens blowing up and the lake that was below and all the trees went into the lake,
Yeah.
they're all petrified wood now. It would take millions of years for that process, but this happened in 50 years.
Yeah,
And so pressure,
they found
heat,
coal that was
different-
created
yeah.
from that. Like all these different, like all the fossil fuels type stuff. There's a lot of indication that you can create fossil fuels really quickly. But again, I mean that's politically a crazy thing to talk about.
Right, exactly.
Because there's a whole other faction that doesn't care about the earth or the Bible, whatever. That's just like, we want to go green, we want to get rid of this stuff. So they're really invested in like, this is, you don't so much hear about it as like a finite resource anymore, but you just hear about it like just bad. But the finite resource thing was like a big deal. What, 70s, like 80s, stuff like that.
I've talked to geologists that they're like, I would never tell anybody this, but I think the Earth is currently and continuously creating fossil fuels. Like it's actually like
Yeah.
it's not just
machine.
We used to think, oh, it's dinosaurs, right? The dinosaurs died, they created
Yeah,
this land.
that's why- that's the
now
name,
there's this
fossil
there's
fuels.
crude oil sludge. And some of
It's
these
plant
geologists are
matter.
like, no, I think the Earth is continuously creating coal and oil, crude oil, and all this. Like it's not finite at all.
This is what I'm like getting at. It's so like all of the, you know, are you old Earth creationists or young Earth creationists aside, you know, the fact that there are these two split theories of like, you know, science is fascinating to me in and of itself, because like I said, I like to reflect on like the reactionary element of it.
Right.
But again, with like the whole fringe science thing, like actual credible people noticing this stuff, and it either gets accepted or dismissed based upon like what is the model, you know? And
Well, there's one more story I have about when I first was like dating my wife. Like I'd fly to Canada and hang out with her family for like 2 weeks. But they just happened to live really close to where they discovered a new species of like some kind of ceratopsian type dinosaur. I forget the name. And then also another one that they actually named after my father-in-law's company. It's called like Certic. I'll show you. It's like called something Certicorum.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a little kind of like a chicken-sized raptor-y looking thing. But anyway, and my father-in-law was deep into construction back then, and they wanted to build this museum in honor of like this thing and this kind of like Alan Grant type of guy. And so they were like quarrying these things like 10 miles away, and somehow my father-in-law got involved with like donating equipment to help them excavate this. So my brother-in-laws, back when we were like closer and I was getting to know them, got to be involved in like helping excavate this stuff.
Did you try this one?
And I've actually been to a couple,
How was it?
since they opened the museum, they have like these
it
yearly,
doesn't taste gross.
the
That's all I
dinosaur
care about.
ball,
It's
they
walking
call it.
in.
And I've been to, so anyway, and of course we're Christians and we're hanging out with these guys, and so we're just kind of asking questions. I wasn't there, I'm really pissed, but my brother-in-laws, the ones that I trust, swear on anything you want, that when they got to be with some of these things, there was like skin on them, and it would, like once they kind of got them out, and they'd deteriorate really quick. And we got a chance one time to hang out with the guy, and they're like, what was that? And he's just like, and he straight up said, he's like, we find that a lot. He's like, I'll deny it. He's like, it's just career suicide.
Yeah.
He's like, there have been people that have tried to say like, look, there's skin on these things, and they're like, he's like, so, like even like a big name like you, and he's like, no, I like, and so he's like, do you guys know what these things like looked like, really? And he's like, we have no idea. We have no idea. He's like, you see, dress for these things. He's like, we have no idea what we're dealing with. He's like, I love this. I go all over the world and look at them. He's like, we have no idea. And one of the guys like, yeah, but I saw a book of yours and you like how it had it illustrated and all this stuff and so, and he's like, look, there's not actually a lot of funding for all this stuff. He's like, it's usually governments that are like doing this, and governments are usually more interested in weapons or whatever. But he's like, you know, way back in my field, they discovered that they're always like, well, what did it look like? You think it had pink stripes or something and whatever? And he's like, you just kind of find yourself like conjecturing, like, well, could have had wings or feathers or been blue. Next thing you know, you get an artist that kind of draws it the way.
Yeah.
And he's like 5 years later, you'll get someone that presents, you know, a paper to you,
Yeah.
and you're like, that's my idea that I made up on the spot
Yeah.
for a reporter,
Yeah.
and now they're passing it off and like, this is how it
Now it's
happened.
in textbooks.
And he's like, that's my industry. He's
Yeah.
like, that's
Yeah.
what it is.
Absolutely.
And I've had enough of those like
Talk
little
about that.
touches with that where I'm just like, it's all yes.
Yeah.
It's
Even the
gotta
word
be.
dinosaur is a fairly recent word.
Yeah, terrible
From the
lizard.
1800s or whatever, yeah.
They're dragons. And our people, our ancestors apparently have dealt with large reptiles
Yeah. Native Americans have
all
drawings that
The time.
really look at.
every part of the world has dealt with them, and they've been rarer and rarer as they seem to have posed quite a threat, and we've killed them off.
There's people that still claim to see raptors and stuff in rainforests, which is freaky.
I believe that they still exist somewhere because there's enough uncharted territory, and there's enough stories, and there's enough stuff that we just don't know,
You know,
like Bigfoot. But again, we've decided that they died out 65 million years ago,
and that's just how it has to be.
and you'd think like a paleontologist to discover, even if you carbon dated it and you found it to be 8 million years old, you'd be ecstatic. But we've just decided that's the last of the dinosaurs. We just decided that.
You know. There's an area in New Mexico where
So it
there's
has to
human
be.
prints and I don't know what dinosaur print in the same mud that's now rock, and it was in the bottom of a riverbed. And for whatever reason, they had a drought. Maybe is it Texas or New Mexico? There was a drought, and
Okay,
the
well-
river dried up that year.
Hold on.
And they're like,
This is my favorite.
what is
event.
this?
It's Jigsaw.
Word got out.
That's my favorite.
People
leader.
were trespassing on the property with
But like,
metal bars, trying to break it all up and
albums
destroy it.
that
It's like
just might be
if you're
accurate.
clinging to your
'Cause I like this one a lot.
like that tightly that you can't even accept that there might be a different
Records.
narrative. It's like that's. I mean, that's
I've also heard a lot
dogmatic.
of misrecords,
And
but that's
that's what I think
too. The record is
the
awesome.
political thing that all of us
I think-
can see much more easily,
The differentiation between like
that if you're silencing, like the
Jeff
people that
Buckley's
have
Grace,
something to
my
hide or
favorite
that
song off that album.
aren't aligned with the truth
is
are the
Grace.
ones silencing.
Yeah.
But I think
The
the best
opposition.
song off that album, or like
And so
it's no like my favorite
think
song off
it's,
that
like,
album is
pretty
Grace,
obvious
but my favorite song from Jeff
that
Buckley is
they know there's
Yeah,
more than
which is
what,
kind of weird.
than what
It's like,
they'll let us talk
it's
about.
like it's hard, I have a hard time explaining it. But I'm like, a lot of people feel that way. Yeah.
But
I read that book, Unsettled. It's about climate change, and legit scientist. He was on the Ben Shapiro show because it was a new book, so he did his quick little 5-minute interview at the end of the show. I'm like, that sounds interesting. But you read the book, and like he goes into all the climate studies that have been done, and supposedly 97% of all climate scientists agree, and there's this consensus and stuff. And he basically debunks it all. And he said, in writing this book and in having the conversations and talking to the research and all this stuff there, he's like, I can't tell you how many people off the record are like, I agree with you. There is not consensus on this, but it's so politically driven that if you want to stay in academia, you want to keep your tenure, you keep your mouth shut, and you just go along with the narrative that, yep, there's climate change, it's human caused,
it's a cult.
it's the science is settled, which no one in science ever says the science is settled.
Yeah, if someone says anything about consensus, whatever, they're
garbage.
lying.
Yep.
Because that's not how science works.
Yeah.
That's why you only get like Trumps and like homeless guys that do Bigfoot or whatever. Because you've either got to be so big you don't give a crap if they
Right.
cut your funding
Yeah.
or your whatever because you've got your own, or you've got to be so maligned and disenfranchised anyway, you've already got nothing to lose. You either can't lose or nothing to lose, and most of us have something to lose, and we're not powerful enough.
Yeah, unless you're an Elon Musk, it's just like, I don't care if it, lose a couple billion. It's like, whatever. Same thing with
I think that's why there's no progress on it.
Harry Potter author again. Kind of the same thing. She's like, I don't care. Try to cancel me.
Yeah, it's going like two ways. Where once money and politics start to influence science, then it becomes like, okay, who can I trust? Because it's like these people are saying this thing, that the Earth is this old. These people are saying this thing in the other direction, and like I should be able to trust the institution of academia to be like, these are the professionals who know what they're talking about. I should trust them, but because of money and politics, we can't. And so now it's like, where is the credibility?
Yeah,
because we don't have an institution to enshrine that as like a guarantee.
Maybe when like the boomer generation dies out, we'll have a better chance. Not to be hating on them, but they're kind of the last, maybe Xers, sorry, Greg. But like just like the last generation that remembers like it's on TV, it's real. It's the institution says it's real. Because our generation is kind of the beginning of like, wait, the institutions are lying? But the news isn't necessarily real?
Well, also like older people are really afraid of AI. Like they see like fake AI stuff and they're like, oh, everyone's gonna believe anything. Whereas like us younger people are like, we can spot AI like a mile away.
Well, we realize it's like we've been playing with Photoshop since we were kids. So it's like, I could have faked you making out with the neighbor's wife 20 years ago manually. Okay, an AI can do it faster.
Right.
But like, seeing is believing was not a thing for us.
Yes.
Like, you're not going to blackmail us with like, we have your audio, you talking about this. It's like, I know that can be faked because I could do it with GarageBand and my Mac. You did it more sophisticatedly, sure, but like, I know that tape's fake.
They went from like just radio for communication to like viewing like the Vietnam War on their televisions, So like they had a huge shift in their life. So like, in a way, I don't blame them for being like ignorant.
I'm not saying like boomers suck. I just mean like that generation. Like, seeing is believing. Like, it's on video, it's legit. We have a recording, like, that's legit. You can't fake that. We're like, you can easily fake that. Like, my 11-year-old could fake that.
Yes.
So, like,
I've faked it so many times.
Yes, you get the government or like someone with actually sophisticated equipment, like, yeah.
Like the moon landing. No, like thinking like you could fake it. Not saying that it's fake.
Theoretically, like no one's saying that, but I just, but right? I mean, you could.
Again, like I say this all the time. We are in such an unprecedented era to go from like the Industrial Revolution being like 100 years ago to where we are now with like global communication all the time and social media. It's like, this is the Wild West, socially and culturally.
Yeah, and I guess maybe me with the generational comment is just, you have generations that haven't realized it's the Wild West yet.
They barely understand that, like, wow, we can learn the news from the TVs, because that happened in their life.
Yeah, because you get like, my mom, I remember, would criticize like people getting their news off of the internet, and I'm like, Mom, like the Fox News article that I'm reading is the article you're reading in the paper.
Right.
It is that article. It's just on my phone.
They're communicating through.
And they're like, it's not legit because it's on your phone. Right. I'm like, Mom, whatever. It's like word for word.
We have that with our parents. They were born in 43 and 49, and so they're definitely like antiquated in their own right.
That's fair, because we will be when we're like 60 or whatever.
Yeah.
There'll be stuff going on and we're just like, that just doesn't make sense.
They invent the interstellar teleport communications. We're like kids these days.
Yeah, like they can teleport you from LA to New York.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not stepping in.
I'm gonna go on coach. I'm a flight coach.
That's how they steal your soul.
You're talking about taking my atoms apart and putting them back together? Hell no. I'm not going in that. You're like, come on, Dad, I just did it 3 times this weekend.
That's transhumanism.
Nope, that ain't natural. God wanted us to fly, we'd have been born with wings.
They're gonna put a chip in my brain when I go through. I just know it.
It's fair, and part of us are, it's not like young people are smarter. We're almost dumb enough to think like, well, they wouldn't let us try it if it wasn't safe. And then next thing you know, we've been doing it for 20 years. And then you realize you're like, wait a minute, they were letting us try it the whole time and it wasn't safe?
Yeah.
And the old guy's like, I told you, but, he was too scared because he knows that, right, like we know now, how many of us didn't take the vaccine because we're like, we know they let you try all kinds of stuff that they know is not safe. Not only do they think maybe it's safe, they know it's not safe. But
if the government's recommending it, it's gone through how many safety trials, right? We're supposed to be on our 9th booster, by the way, so shoot, you got some more.
I am behind.
Just get all 9 at once.
All 9 at once, yeah.
My goodness, you probably die instantly.
There's that story of that guy that was sneaking in and getting a shot a day.
Because he
did this for 2 months or something. Because he was so deathly afraid, so he kept I don't know what you need to do to change your identity, but he just every day would go in and get another.
That's what's interesting is so they've honed this whatever mind control machine so well that on certain people it just self-replicate or whatever. That's not the word I want, but they're not recommending that at all. But he's now taking their stuff upon himself and saying they're not doing it enough. I'm taking this into my own hands and ramping it up.
Right.
Well, when even Fauci'd be like, dude, I didn't say every day. Come on.
That's
I can only pocket so much money.
That's the leftist religion, right? Viewing the government as your savior. It's
and you don't question anything with the FDA. You don't question anything with the CDC, which is so weird on the left. That's what RFK Jr. would say, right? It's the classic liberals they even would be very questioning of their government. They were all about free speech and having robust conversations and arguments, right? They were the ones that were very skeptical of big pharma, big business, all of that. Now the left is we're all about big pharma, and we're all about just trust all the institutions and all the things until they don't work for you anymore. Then you destroy the institution and then, do something else.
I think the thing, I have to go pretty soon, is the sense of being in on it.
Mm-hmm.
How to describe right, because they'll vote for or champion things that will hurt them in many other areas, but they kind of think they're in on they think they're getting a little bit of the scraps of power. I've really always wanted to oppress you as my neighbor, but I've never really had any grounding for it.
Yeah.
And now that I get this mask thing and you're not wearing a mask, I get to be part of the oppressor class.
Yeah.
Even just my own little sliver of it. And I think that's the mindset.
my dad said that this was bad.
Yeah, my dad.
So I get to point at my sibling and say, you're disobeying.
And I live in Minneapolis, and Tim Walz set up this Snoop line where you can basically rat out your neighbor for not wearing their mask or not getting their shot or leaving their house during lockdowns. And there was a lot of people that were just yes, they've been waiting for that.
Because none of it, there's not an ounce of it that's genuine concern for the neighbor. It's all, I've hated my neighbor in my heart this entire time. And now Daddy's finally, give me the green light to go beat him up in some sort of way.
Basically,
And I think that explains someone on the left.
Yeah.
Completely.
And that's what we talked about in the LPR. There's freedom versus force. Those are the two sides.
And that's why there's a lot of people that think they're on the right who are leftists because they're motivated by that.
Yes. Yep.
So maybe just Trump's now their daddy, or so-and-so is their daddy, and now it justifies, but it comes down to I've always hated my neighbor in my heart.
And it'd be totally fine if Trump told them to exert force on their neighbors because we're in the right, so let's do it. But in reality, they're not about freedom. Yeah, they're about force.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but I feel like a lot of unhealthy interaction with politics stems from a bad familial experience. Whether you're hardcore,
how could you be wrong on that one?
hardcore left in a unhealthy way, or even hardcore right in an unhealthy way, it comes from probably like you had a bad relationship with your parents or your siblings or whatever, and you're manifesting it in this extrapolated way probably without you even realizing it.
Right. I'm sure it really informs a lot of your current positions on a lot of things. I mean, you're so impressionable growing up, and how you were parented in, how
Same goes
interactions with siblings.
with religion too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If you have a bad relationship with your father, you're probably going to be more dismissive of religion.
And unfortunately, so many people are so unoriginal that they're just reactionary. All they do is just react in their life, but they think they're being so original. It's like, I came up with this thought, this idea, and there's other people that think it too, and in reality, you're just rejecting the form of Christianity you were raised under. So now you're like, I was here, so now I'm going to be here. I'm pissed at Dad because he was
so
like,
I'm going to say, screw you, old man.
Yeah,
in
overbearing.
the most predictable way that everyone is always.
So predictable. Yeah.
And that's like a really significant moment in a person's life when you stop moving, look around you, see what you're reacting to, what's driving you in a reactionary way, versus like, this is what I value and I think is good. That's a real gear shift in how you live, and a lot of people don't have those moments.
I applaud people that do, because to be that, I would just like all those
It's
words,
hard.
but like being that self-aware, looking at your past, looking at your experiences, looking at your biases, and then realizing I've been reacting to stuff in my life, but I'm not coming from original thought, I'm just being reactionary, but let me think this through. And so you see those, the preacher kids, right? So many of them rebel, but then some of them like figure God out on their own, not their own religion, but they find God on their own, and then they're a force to be reckoned with because they own it, they figured it out for themselves. They're not just reacting to how hypocritical their pastor dad was when he would like curse Santa at home, but then on the way to church, let's look like a good family. It's so easy to want to respond to that and react to that.
Because you think that's Christianity, what you had.
But then if you're a big boy enough, you realize, you know what, that was my dad trying to do his best. He was a flawed person. I need to figure out my faith on my own. I need to work it out, with fear and trembling and all the things we're supposed to do. I need to go through sanctification on my own. My parents can't do it for me.
Because you felt that truth.
It takes a big person to do that.
And you don't want that negative experience to like tidal wave over that truth that you felt.
Because maybe your dad was also a Republican. So now I'm going to reject that too.
Exactly, yeah.
Which, that's fine. You don't have to be a Republican. But if you're just being reactionary, again, it's super unoriginal. And it's not really well thought out.
A lot of Haley's friends are like that.
Interesting.
Women are very reactionary. It's the pendulum right back the other direction.
Don't drag me back into the whole our society is screwed because we let them make decisions thing.
Dude, the more that we talk about it, Haley and I both like feel kind of the same way.
It's look, it's not like I woke up one day and was like, I hate women and I want to disparage them.
In a pragmatic way, it makes a lot of sense.
It's a lot like all this other stuff we're talking about. Like, because you deal with them all the time, and you're told dogmatically, like, they're great, they're equal, they're probably smarter than you are. And you're like, yes, a good boy agrees with all that. And then but you like deal with them at work and in life, and your siblings and your wives, and you like love them. And you're like, but I don't know, but I can't talk about this with anybody.
They don't have as much like teeth in the game as men do,
and I think,
even though it's supposed to be an even playing field, they purposefully aren't. They don't have as much teeth in the game by nature.
And it's that single 30, 40 something cat lady. I mean, it's like JD Van said, which I know it's taken out of context, but that part of the electorate is probably the most concerning because, you'd see all the street interviews and you ask these women that are single, they bought into the idea that I need to have a career, not get married or have kids, and then they become a little bit more bitter, and then they just start clinging to stuff that kind of is irrational. And then when you go and interview them and like, why are you voting for Kamala? Well, because she's a woman. Well, and she's black. It's like, well, but what policies? It doesn't really matter. It's like, should you really be voting?
They're like it's the absolute worst demographic
Yep.
you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. And I think there should be some sort of a litmus test of
And they have no. I mean, if you look at like their life, like they truly, all the safety nets are built for that demographic.
Right.
So daddy is the
Yep.
government.
Right.
And they're designed to stand by their man type of a thing. But
Right.
their man is the government.
Right.
And so they're going to vote for all kinds of things that will oppress daddy's rivals, which are other individual men, businesses,
That's scary.
anything else. And so like it's their biology that we're all aware of is like playing itself out. It's just been like perverted to, instead of latching onto like a man and looking out for him and some kids, you're looking out for the best interests of like, you know, it's not like Biden, but like this state organism, and that's their man, and they'll fight you viciously to defend him.
You know what's crazy though is like the Whatever podcast that has like whatever 3-4 million subscribers. Like the guests on that show will talk about this kind of stuff. Like there's been a guy on like Andrew Wilson and some, I don't remember his name, but he's been a regular guest and he's kind of been like the okay.
It was good to the very end.
Nice.
Very spicy, very consistent.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's like the like secular pickup artist dudes are more honest about this than,
Yes.
you know, well thought out Christians.
But like he's bringing like on the Whatever podcast, not even
Is
just
that what
him.
it's called? The Whatever podcast?
Yeah.
It's just called Whatever.
Okay.
They bring
Right,
on
right.
like
I know.
OnlyFans
Yep.
stars
why-
and talk to them about
I
like,
can't remember that that's what
People
it's called.
crowded around a
their
tiny
value,
table.
their sexual marketplace value.
But they'll bring up topics
Oh,
like
yeah.
should women vote on that podcast that has like 4 million subscribers. So
I think once
it's
you
not
know
as fringe
women,
as
you
might
love
think.
them and you want to care for them more than ever, and then you realize like you can't make
There's
important
a
societal decisions.
Fundamental like divide.
Like even like your design, it's not a flaw, but you're put in situations where it becomes a huge liability.
Sure. When do you need to leave?
I should leave at 6.
I was gonna say you still have not read your ghost story.
Oh no.
Do we have time for it?
Probably not. Well, I don't have to. I'll listen to it online.
Oh, okay. There you go.
We're taking some friends out to Devil's Kitchen. Our reservation's at 7, so I figure
You better, yeah.
go shower, blah blah, brush enough that I can get a
And
kiss at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Right.
When you have that many kids, you like I swear every time I'm like I'm gonna be here early. Never happens.
Yeah.
It's like I still have not padded my clock enough to warrant.
You guys did good today.
We did okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was here at exactly 3:30.
So are you gone the whole month of October then?
I'm committing myself to leaving like the second week of October
Yeah. Wow.
and staying out by my mom's through my birthday, which is November 3rd.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Well, maybe we can make something happen somewhere before he leaves. It'd be fun to just get together again.
Yeah.
I'd love to get together again. I gotta clear my head. I've had a stressful summer. We did have a big, I didn't even talk about, but we sold some equipment in Canada.
You brought that up during the basketball one, I think. You were talking about like prospects.
Yeah, and so
Did
a
that-
lot of
did
the,
that
you know,
happen?
prospect, a lot of them were nothing burgers,
So
but one turned into basically like a $700,000 win at the end of the day.
excellent.
Nice.
So this week, I paid off $75,000 of credit card debt that was used for the business,
Sure.
but it was personal credit card debt.
Yeah.
I paid off $175,000 in a line of credit on my rentals.
Praise God, dude.
I did pay a
Separately, that wasn't like one big, or was it? One big line of credit?
yeah. There's one
Really?
big line of
Okay,
credit. It's like a
gotcha.
$200,000 line of credit.
Yeah.
Like my wife's saying, like, I'm stepping out right now and I'm gonna get in the car.
Bye, Dominic.
All right, love you too. Bye. And no, so like, you have like a $200,000 line of credit, and it was up to $175,000.
Yeah.
So I paid that off. What else? I did write a commission check for like $65,000 to the guy up there who helped me. It was worth every penny of it. I gave my bank $220,000 towards my equipment loan that I still like owe 1.2 million on. But
Crazy to be like working at that level of numbers, dude.
And I paid about $100,000 of like accounts payable. You know, like 20 grand to this guy and this guy and this guy for the business off. So that's why I'm just like, you get a $50 cigar, and you get, because I just feel great.
You get a free car. You get a free car.
Free orange chicken.
Yeah, look under your seats. No, just like, but that happened like Monday.
Yeah. Of this week.
Yeah, of this week.
Nice.
After a million twists and turns of like, what's gonna happen? No, it's not gonna happen. And I'm working on more, and I've got a lot of promise for more. Because my goal is just like, get out of debt. But after the stress of so much of that, I'm just like, I want to leave here. Not because it's here, just something that's unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. You know, because I'll drive by the post office, it'll remind me of the stress of something. So it's like, I just want to go somewhere else.
I totally
and it sounds only appropriate to go home. Yeah. My brother just had their first daughter a month ago.
Oh, right, yeah.
My mom is 74, and I should just take every chance I can get. She's also showing some bits of like mental decline, so I'm gonna go take her to the doctor. We're gonna work on her house, and I don't want to do that like, you know, week trip where it's like I saw all my childhood friends for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I want to go there long enough to where like I'm bored. I want to go back home or back here.
Yeah.
So I just said I'm just gonna go for a better part of a month.
Yeah.
Solid.
Because finally I can. Because before it was like, you know, you want the beef top ramen or the chicken top ramen.
Right.
And I'm by no means like out of the way. Like I said, I still owe like over $1 million. But it's just been like
the pressure's off a little bit.
Yeah. Like I'm not.
You're coming through.
The firing squad's not like loading.
Right.
You know, they're taking at least the weekend off.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, yeah, I gotta get out of here.
Good.
So.
Godspeed, buddy.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So.
And it was nice to check in again and visit.
It is. I've missed you guys a lot. So.
Don't go to Gunnison next time.
Gunnison. Yeah. Hopefully I've got that figured out, but you never know. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time, and I'll catch the story online.
Yes.
And I'll take my trash.
I'll send you once it's posted, I'll send you the link with the timestamp,
Okay.
if I can remember,
Cool.
for Greg's spooky story.
Cool. See you guys.
See you guys. So what is this thing? Is it the Grand Junction story?
It's the Grand Junction story. It's not super long.
Oh, I'm scared.
I'm freaking out.
I'm freaking
Use
out
my
over
new
here.
50 magnet
I
glasses.
like those are so cool. You like
when you pulled those apart, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But then you put them back together, I'm like, oh, never
you're like
mind. Tony Stark over there.
Andrea gave me the green light on the old man glasses. So.
you're like an old like Chinese guy. Like at his shop is like,
Ooh.
when he like takes them apart. and he's
Taking
like,
out my old dusty ghost story book
a
and
tome.
So how old is this story? What's the year? Did it
I
say?
don't. I don't know. I don't think it says.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can tell I haven't smoked a cigar in a bit when I get razzed after just like the first one.
I haven't smoked since the last time we recorded, so.
Really?
I'm 2 cigars in, which is like kind of, that's a lot for me, but I'm like, I can feel it.
I smoked a couple a week, but I'm down to like $3 cigars. I mean, it's just I can't justify even a $10 cigar.
I don't go into Rems often enough to smoke. Also, like now that we have Henry, I'm just like, it's hard to get away for a little bit. But
Seasons of life.
that's right.
All right.
Is this called something?
No, it's just it's the Grand Junction story. And so what's interesting is before Antonio, before each actual story, he'll give a little bit of history. So there's one in here about Glenwood Springs. There's like 2.5 pages where he talks about Glenwood Springs, kind of how it was founded. Doc Holliday went there for treatment for his tuberculosis. There's these different hotels there, and then I think finally the story is the one haunted hotel up in Glenwood.
Okay.
So I think it'd be good for someone that's not familiar with Colorado, that maybe wants a little bit of back history and backstory. So he does something similar. So the first 3 paragraphs are basically Ute Indians occupied this area. In 1881, it was called, this area was called the town of Ute. And then after that, then they called this area West Denver. And then in 1921, then they renamed it Grand Junction because of the confluence of the rivers there.
Sure.
So that's kind of her or his backstory on it. Then he even mentions Country Jam Festival and Dinosaur Days that's here.
Nice.
All right. Yeah. So this is Catherine Fuente's story. So she says, the author says, I met twice with Kathy in preparation for her interview. I also made a series of phone calls to her prior to our actual face-to-face meeting. This was definitely one of the most difficult interviews I've conducted as far as scheduling is concerned. Eventually we did meet, and from start to finish she must have smoked at least 5 cigarettes within the span of an hour.
Awesome.
Excellent. She was nervous and not at all comfortable about discussing her or anyone else's ghost story. After the interview I discovered that she had a few more stories to tell, but because of the uncomfortable effect on her, she chose to share only one of them. The story that follows is a tragic one and gives an insight into the rarely spoken career experience of a police officer. I know this story will leave you as surprised and baffled as it did me. So here we go. I'm 39 years old and was born in Phoenix, Arizona. I married my college sweetheart, Adam, who was from Durango. We married after, so this is a gal he's interviewing. We married after we both had graduated from the University of Arizona. Then within a month, we had moved to Adam's hometown in Durango. We lived in Durango for 12 years, after which we moved to Grand Junction. We now have been living in Grand Junction for 7 years. This might still be a local, I don't know. We moved to Grand Junction because I got a job at as a police dispatch operator. I applied for the position 8 months earlier, and after I had taken both the written and verbal tests, I was hired to begin working within the following month. Adam easily found work in town as a graphic web designer. So again, probably, more recent time, if he's doing graphic design. My job description or duties were in the communications department of GJPD, receiving emergency calls from the public, dispatching officers, emergency techs, psychological emergency teams, which we currently have. That's a fairly recent thing. Fire crews were all in a day's or night's work for me. One morning I received a call from the front desk of a local hotel. I'd love to know the hotel. The hotel manager informed me that just a few minutes before, one of the housekeeping cleaning staff had discovered the dead body of a young man in one of the rooms. As she entered the room to clean it for the next guest, she found the body of a man face down by the side of the bed, obviously dead.
Is it room 1408?
Where is this?
Here in Grand Junction.
Does it say what motel
It says
it is?
a local hotel.
Okay.
All it says.
Yeah.
It's the Red Roof Inn or whatever.
The Red
Didn't
Roof
somebody
Inn.
die in that? I don't know.
Oh, there's been deaths in a lot of hotels here. Calls like this were not uncommon. Sadly, people who are despondent for many reasons, known only to themselves, choose to commit suicide in hotel rooms. It's actually a phenomenon.
That kind of doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, sometimes they'll go and just get slobbering drunk and then just take a bunch of pills, and like they don't want to do it at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, around
Yeah,
people.
it's an interesting thing. Some simply die from heart attacks or various other reasons. That morning when I got the call, I relayed the information I was given by the hotel manager to the unit or police car that was currently in the area. Nothing out of the ordinary. I knew Kenny, the officer who would be responding, so I very matter-of-fact provided him with the information I was given. I was confident that at the end of Kenny's shift, he and I would locate each other and he would give me a few of the details surrounding the call. Because of confidentiality issues, I'd keep the information to myself, and he also knew I'd be interested in this particular case. Kenny and I eventually did meet up with each other a few hours after the call, but what he experienced and described took place during that call really made my hair stand on end. Kenny came into my office while I was on a call, motioning to me with his hand to talk to him. After a few minutes, I met with him, but he seemed a bit nervous and agitated. He told me that after he had parked his patrol car at the hotel and had walked to the front desk, the manager had directed him to the floor and room where the body lay. Kenny also was given the victim's address, phone number, vehicle's description, and the maid's report. That was all. After these limited details, Kenny said he walked into the hotel room. It was still early in the morning, around 10 a.m. As Kenny approached the first flight of stairs, he spotted a young guy standing by the stairs guardrail. The guy seemed excited to see Kenny and said, "You need to go to room 312. The body's in there and you need to take care of it." Kenny responded, "Yeah, I know, that's where I'm heading. Who are you and why are you sweating so much?" The guy responded, "Come on, I'll show you exactly where the room is." Before Kenny could ask another question, the guy raced up the stairs in a flash. Kenny said that the guy was not quickly running up the stairs, but more like sprinting. He was there 1 second and gone the next. Lots of exclamation points, by the way. The writing style is interesting.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
choppy, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting.
Kenny said that he never had seen anyone travel upstairs like that before. He took off up the stairs after the guy to the third floor, then entered the victim's room. He never saw the guy he was chasing. Kenny opened the door and walked inside. With the door open and the light on, he immediately spotted the victim. Though most of the young man's body was on the floor, the victim's head was lodged between the nightstand and the bed. One leg was still draped over the side of the bed, and a small caliber gun was on the floor just a few feet away from the body. A 3-page suicide note had also been placed on the bed. There was no visible blood due to the small caliber of the bullet, which had not exited the head but instead remained lodged within the victim's skull. Kenny had responded to several suicide calls before, much more gruesome than this one, but what made this call different from the other suicide calls in the past was that the victim was the same guy Kenny had just met and spoken to a few minutes before on the stairs. Kenny was adamant about this. He says, quote, "The guy had the same clothes, haircut, everything was the same. This was the same guy." I said, "Kenny, are you sure about this? Come on, how could it be the same guy?" Kenny responded, "I bet my badge on it." "It was the same guy, Kathy. It was the same guy. Look at me. Do I look like I'm lying or trying to play a joke on you? I saw a ghost, Kathy. It was the ghost of that young guy laying in that room. You know, I can't tell anyone about this. I'd be laughed out of the department, but I can tell you what happened." So then she says, "I was totally caught off guard by the story. I told him he needed to think about the possibilities that it could have been a weird coincidence." Kenny said, "Yeah, but the guy I met on the stairs was wearing the same clothes as the victim, and he flew up the stairs. He didn't run, Kathy, I'm telling you, he flew up the stairs." After that day, Kenny and I did talk about his experience, but I never was the one to bring it up first. I know by his composure that he truly believed that what he had seen was the spirit of the dead guy. Whether there was a message to this, there's no way I can say, but it had to be one of the strangest stories I'd ever heard.
It's so weird.
Short story.
Does it say in the front of the book when this was published?
So this, first edition, 2008.
Okay.
It's probably an older story.
Well, you mentioned some things in that were fairly recent, so at least post 2008. But
Yeah, the psychological co-responders. I don't know how long
That's
PD's had that department like that, but that probably the last 10 years.
probably. That's
But I mean, if it's published in 2008, the story's got to be older than that. I don't know.
Well, if the first publication is that
True.
old, there might be extra stories now. That's really interesting.
That's the only one of Grand Junction.
I've heard that Hotel Melrose downtown is supposedly haunted. And I think that's the one someone just bought it and they remodeled it. Now it's a cute little boutique hotel with a bar downstairs. I was talking about, I guess the bartender's like world class, makes some phenomenal cocktails, and he's just known for that. And I don't know if it could be the Red Roof Inn. I mean, I don't know, but
I recently shot a home for. I saw a good Instagram thing of like POV or someone overhearing photographers talking, and it's just this woman being like progressively horrified, and it's people being like, "Oh yeah, I shot a family up on the hill. Oh yeah, I shot their kids like separately too.
yeah.
That kind of stuff." I shot a house for Jay Lynn, who is Jamie Gallup's mom. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is just like no response.
Sorry.
It's all good. And it was on Chipeta Avenue, 124-year-old house. It was built in 1900.
Grief.
Yep.
There's very few homes around that are that old here.
I walked through, like, I still have the video here that I sent to one of my friends of me walking through the house.
Yeah, that house could tell stories.
Yeah, here you go. So just I don't care about you guys. I'm going to show Greg. So this is mainly for the sound. But you can like hear the creaky floorboards as I walk through. Like these floorboards have been the same probably since 1900. Like as I walked through, it was just like.
That's creepy.
And yeah, like every room had like dark wallpaper, not well lit.
Yeah.
Just looks like something out of some like gothic painting or whatever. But like as I was going through that house, like I had that feeling like kind of crossed my mind of like there's so much history here.
Yeah.
That like as I'm like going through and opening and closing doors and like opening these closet spaces and whatnot, like if there were any place that could be haunted, it would be this.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's been so much like history here and like people who have lived in this space. And I think that's the key to a haunted place is the people who have lived in it.
Yep.
So like the older a place is, the more I feel that kind of like, not necessarily like being scared, but like a reverence for like, this is a storied place.
Yep.
And it like feels special.
Yep. Hundreds of people that have probably lived there.
Uh-huh.
Familial fights.
Yeah. Who knows what?
Deaths. Murders.
So many, there was definitely like an addition to the house that was put in the back area that was done, I don't know, looked like maybe in the 60s, 70s, 80s, who knows, but like just a weird gradient of like history in that house that I could just kind of sense by being in that space.
Yep.
And it was like, ooh.
And I've read enough stories, listened to enough, witnesses on podcasts that, with the age of certain properties, there's a history there. It just, especially if there's, if it was like an orphanage or an insane asylum, like some of the most quote unquote haunted places,
They have like the darker, more depressive kind of people living in them.
Have you seen Nefarious yet? Have we talked about that?
No.
Great movie.
What is it about?
So it's about a man in prison. He's on death row, and a psychiatrist is coming in to determine whether he's sane or not.
That's
if
right.
He can,
That's right.
if he should, serve out his death penalty. But if he's insane, then he doesn't have to, go to the lethal injection or electric chair is what they're doing. And they filmed it I think it's an old abandoned prison that is known to be extremely haunted and it's super creepy.
I think I've seen some clips.
I think it was the producers or the producer and the director. I don't know. They were on Blurry Creatures not too long ago.
They talked about it?
Talked about it, and they talked about all the stuff that happened to them and their crew. 12 different car accidents.
So
No, like, major, like, bodily injuries, but just close calls, weird stuff. A bunch of people got sick, like, kind of like COVID and the flu, but not really, and tons of weird stuff. Even while they're there at the prison trying to film, this high windstorm comes up. They sort of was like once in a century. They could hear like the top of the roof just like rattling and rattling and rattling, and the people are like, that's never happened here before. Like just almost like weird supernatural stuff happening while they're filming, trying to get this thing done. They finally get the thing, like every force on earth is trying to keep this film from happening. And then the guy that plays the inmate that's a serial killer that claims to be possessed by a demon does just a phenomenal job. But even the director, he's like, don't do too much of a good job. Like, we don't need to actually
We don't need to
conjure
lean
something
into that as
Right.
much as we should.
And so I had heard about it. The movie cover looks super creepy.
Did you watch it?
It's rated R. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna watch it. So I watched it by myself. You know, kids were doing something else. Most everyone was in bed, and the guys on the Blurred Creatures podcast are like, yeah, we have friends that have seen it like 15 times now. And I'm like, why did you watch that 15 times? Well, then I watched the movie. I'm like, man, there was a lot there. I need to watch that again. There's like
the few clips I watched,
heavy pro-life stuff in there. It's just the whole thing is
like you
super
said,
interesting.
his performance is like really magnetic. There's something really subtle about it.
He did a really, really good job.
I should check out the full thing.
I'd
I
recommend
forgot it existed.
On the budget that they had, I think they did a really good job. And which it wasn't a super high budget anyway, because it's like almost the entire thing happens in one room, where this psychologist comes in, the guy's there at the table, his hands are chained, and then they just have all these conversations throughout the whole movie. There's a little bit of stuff on the fringe, but super wild, super creepy, super interesting. Yeah, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, like low budget doesn't mean it's going to be bad. Low budget means you might like fart out a movie by like, you know,
Yeah,
trying to make the Blair Witch Project because it's easy and cheap to film in
Right.
the woods. But
yeah.
it's like Christopher Nolan's first movie cost him like $6,000.
Really?
He filmed it on the weekend because that's when he was off work and his friends were off of work and they could film it. And he just scraped together some kind of really simple.
That's phenomenal.
Actually, it was it's called Following,
Okay.
and I watched it one time. It's the movie that he made right before Memento, and I think he and his brother like co-wrote it, and then he made it like with his friends on the weekend when they were off work.
Yeah.
It took him a long time to do because they could only work at, on the weekend, but
Right.
it wasn't even like a full 90 minutes.
Huh.
But it is told non-linearly like Memento.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's like a crime movie.
It's like a pre-Memento.
Exactly. But like
for
he
shots.
showed that like if you can just like make something smart or interesting, do all of the work that you can do outside of that budget, and then when it comes time to actually film,
Yeah.
then have it ready to go. Which that's the case with a lot of albums too.
Yeah.
Like there are some bands who are like, you know what, we're poor.
Yep.
And we can only afford like a day or two of studio time. Let's rehearse the heck out of these songs and make our album in like 1 or 2 days.
Yeah.
And they knock it out of the park.
Just a couple of takes and we're good.
Yep. There's a handful of bands that have done that, and they're like some of the most legendary albums because they were just like
Yeah.
nailed it first try.
That's cool.
So low budget doesn't always mean bad.
Right. But yeah, I'd recommend it. But yeah, we're talking about, haunted places, and yeah, who knows what went on in that prison. And I would say, in my Christian faith, even 10 years ago, I would have said that there's no such thing as ghosts or hauntings or any of that. Mostly just because I didn't have like a place for it. And I think Christians do a huge disservice to themselves and others where we just try to attribute anything paranormal to, it's a demon.
It's like demonic or something.
You have a bad headache, it's a demon. It's the squid demon on your head or whatever.
You know what I think it is? It's because our faith and doctrine, because they don't necessarily talk about those kinds of experiences,
Yeah.
we therefore assume they don't exist.
Right.
So it's like we write them off rather than be like, oh, this is something that seems real.
Yeah.
My faith doesn't tell me how to process this, so
Right.
I don't know what to do with it.
I mean, after listening to Michael Heiser, reading his books, and then he was on Blurry Creatures before he died, and he made a pretty compelling argument for disembodied human souls. Like, for whatever reason, some of them seem to wander around and do weird stuff, and it's like, oh, that's wild. And the idea too that, yeah, it's not just like a demon, because again, you have to define, well, what is a demon? Is it just like a nefarious spiritual being? And if so, are there different types of those? Because some seem to be like tricksters, where they play tricks on
What
people.
are their motives?
What are their motives? Like the
Powerful they are?
the woman in white.
Yeah.
Thousands of encounters with this woman in white. She looks, I don't know what era, Victorian, maybe a little bit later, wearing like full night garment type undergarment, like you would wear to bed. She has dark hair, almost looks like the girl that crawls out of the TV in Ring. Yeah. Which they probably based that on that.
Sure.
It's like so many people have seen her, and there was a guy on Blurry Creatures just recently that he was law enforcement, and he had an encounter, and then his mom had an encounter, and then I think an aunt had an encounter. He's like, why our family? What does it all mean? Mom saw a woman in white in the hospital, but it didn't feel nefarious, and then her cancer goes into remission, and then she's cured. He's like, so that's weird. She seemed to help him, or it, or whatever it was. But then I see it, and it seems super nefarious, and it's like the thing of demons, and it's floating in the road, and it's like, how do you make sense of anything? Well, why is it always like this one entity that looks the same to everybody? It's like, is that just a demon that's like, this is how I just want to look to everybody? Or is there way more going on there than we know? I don't know. That stuff's wild.
Is it our own, like, the way we perceive them is like, influenced by ourselves and what we hear?
Very possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, they've talked about
So many variables.
Mothman.
Yes.
Someone sees it, a few people see it, then it's in the paper and it's everywhere. So then anything you see that looks strange, a big bird, oh, I think I saw Mothman. So there's definitely that psychology that can happen for sure. But Woman in White, I don't know how many people know about her or think about her, or if you saw something would think that it's that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you hear enough, and she looks the exact same to everyone. She never talks to anybody. She's usually on the road. Sometimes she'll look at you, sometimes she won't. Sometimes she's just like walking through a field. It's like if it's a demon, what are they accomplishing? Like, what are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
If it's just a disembodied person that maybe had a traumatic death, even then it's like, why do some apparitions get to actually show themselves, but others don't? What's going to happen with that person with the second judgment? Like, all these things, like, I don't know. And there's just probably more questions than answers, but
And
it's interesting.
it also gets into like the thing we were talking about before about credibility, where it's like, which of these stories do we take as more true than others?
Right.
And like, in a way it's frustrating, but also it's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes figuring out the world around you more dynamic and interesting.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I feel is a disservice is being done to the people who are being like told by scientists this is what's what, rather than being like, go look for yourself and make your own judgments.
I mean,
It's complicated, but
I've talked to other Christians. I've talked to family members that are Christians that are like, I think just about everything can be attributed to just a natural thing, almost to the point of like, I don't even know that there's any really supernatural things that happen at all. It's like, man, is that really the world we live in?
I don't think that's biblical.
Seems like Paul had something to say about that. And I know you could we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, principalities, powers of the air. But if you were a Second Temple Jew, you very much believed in angels coming down, fornicating with women, giant races, all these different things. When Christ came, I mean, there's no qualms that like this person's possessed. It's very obvious. They speak to him. They acknowledge that they know he's the Christ. They're like, send us into the swine over there because, disembodied Nephilim spirits, which are demons, they want to be in a warm body in a host. And it's really interesting because the Nefarious movie, they really go into that quite a bit. It's like, and I guess they consulted with a priest that is like one of the known priests to do exorcism. Like that's what he does. And they consulted with him on it, and he's like, that's spot on. That's my experience. That's what they say. That's how they act. It's like, well, all right. Yeah, so it's...
Do you know about Faith, the video game?
The Unholy Trilogy one or whatever?
Yeah.
I watched Wendigon's video on it. I didn't finish it, but yes, I know of the game, though.
So,
It's kind of crazy.
We may have talked about it briefly at one point.
I don't know if we did, actually. I mean, maybe.
So we've talked about Wendigoon before,
Yeah,
of course. Our good little Christian boy over on YouTube,
I've watched some other stuff.
who's now a married man,
Yep, he made a movie.
strong Christian, like still under the age of 30, pumping out great YouTube videos. Like,
amazing.
need more of that, right?
Yeah.
He did a full playthrough of this game by, I believe he was once like a youth pastor.
I think so. I'm not entirely sure.
What was involved with ministry, but like really resonated with, Christian-related horror stuff like The Exorcist and all that, and made this 3-chapter game about this girl who gets possessed by demons and this whole cult and stuff that surrounds it. And I don't know. I'm so fascinated by Christians who are able to make good horror, because I feel like that's like, especially going into Spooktober season. I know, like, and I really take seriously Paul's thing in, was it the end of Philippians, where he talks about like whatever is good, beautiful, etc., etc. Think about these things. Like, I take that very seriously, but at the same time, I really enjoy reflecting on like really scary, like the world we live in is flawed, and that's our experience, and like we have to take the good with the bad and figure out how God is talking to us through that. Did you ever see The Exorcist?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Okay. So you remember the plot, basically?
Basically, yeah.
Maybe, have you seen The Exorcist? Maybe that should be one you guys watch
Yeah,
this
I mean,
year
it's
for
been 20
Halloween.
plus years, yeah.
I'll put it on the list.
The guy who, I don't know if he wrote it as a play or a novel, but I think he was Catholic. But it's the movie, at least, because I don't know much about the source material, but I watched the movie, and like as a Christian, like I definitely resonate with it, because like it doesn't have that like Hollywood slant of any kind of secularism or anything. It's very profound in a Christian sense, while also being like kind of terrifying in that earthly sense, where it's like, ooh, this is kind of gritty and intense, but I don't know. I really resonate with like horror that reflects like Christian ideas and thinking and stuff like that. And I feel like most Hollywood stuff that explores it doesn't do a very good job, because they don't understand Christianity at all.
Right.
But I know that Matt Fradd, Pints with Aquinas guy, he and his sister actually like co-write like a horror series. Like they've written like horror short stories.
Yeah.
So like he very much values that as well.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are really put off by it, and which I understand.
Yeah,
like
I do too.
If it's like too much for you, like I don't know everyone's past or history or their makeup, so I'm not gonna force anybody. But I don't want people to like write it off, because I think that it is very valuable to kind of look in the face our enemy and to like understand it deeply, to the point of like, oh, this is what Satan wants humans to turn into. Satan wants us to forget God and just turn into ourselves
Yeah.
and become like a whirlpool of ourselves and our desires and
Yeah.
all the violence and selfishness within ourselves. And it's like, that is like the most profound horror.
Mm-hmm.
And like really looking that in the face like makes me reflect that back to like my appreciation for God and what the
Yeah.
inverse of that is.
And understanding, I think it's kind of expanding your spiritual worldview.
Mhm.
Where I think a lot of Christians just consolidate it down to, like, I know Christians that don't even want to talk about angels and demons. Yeah, I just don't want to go there. Which I'd say is almost shocking to me, but
Especially for angels.
yeah, agreed. It's like, it just,
They're on our side.
the thought of it just kind of freaks them out a little bit. It's like, man, that's
That's just too, like, you're just thinking too earthly, and that's
Yeah.
not what you want to be
It's
doing.
naive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, to the extent that maybe that's even useful to Satan or the enemy, I mean, what does that quote say, that, Satan's greatest achievement was convincing people he didn't exist?
That's from The Usual Suspects.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. The greatest lie that the devil ever told,
Yeah.
convincing the world he didn't exist.
And I'd say that's pretty true, but I'd say even more so for Christians, which is super concerning.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's not like you need to just, like, get a Ouija board and start messing around with stuff too. I think you need to be really careful for all that.
It's about being attentive.
Just being aware of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think one of the best episodes I heard around all of that was, again, Blurry Creatures, and it was a gal that it's called Into the Astral or something like that, something astral. But it's a gal that came out of New Age and occult stuff, and it's interesting because originally she started out, just kind of playing around a little bit, had some crystals, a little bit of Wiccan stuff, did a few seances and stuff, and then started working on out-of-body experiences and astral projection and all the stuff that I used to think was just all made up. It's just stuff that happens in your brain that's not actually true. And she makes a pretty compelling argument that, like, oh yeah, you can definitely tap into supernatural things that we're not supposed to, but
Talking about mixing up dimensions. Huh?
mixing up dimensions. And she said, when you hear stories about that, it's like, oh yeah, I went out of body and I went, 2 states over and I saw something, and then went ahead and looked it up online
Corroborated.
later, and yep, sure enough, that flag was outside that business's, on the front street there, and I saw that when I was there. There's no way for me to know that. Phew. And then she actually was able to use that, she thought, to help people, these things that she was getting into, tarot cards and all of that. And she's like, and that's usually how it starts. You feel good about it. It feels, like it's a helpful. The spirits feel helpful. Everything like white. You're like a white witch. She's like, but then pretty quickly it starts to become really dark, and then you start to be visited by very dark beings that are then just telling you some crazy stuff, and it just gets worse and worse. And she said, eventually, really, they just try to kill you. They want to kill you. Like, they hate you, whether this is demons or some sort of nefarious supernatural beings. And so then she tells her whole story and how she got out of that and how she found Christ and found deliverance from all that. But you see so many, like Pastor Tim said, the whole Wiccan movement, it's grown by like 1,000% or something in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much interest in it now. I mean, I see cars driving around town that have like
Yeah, I
stuff
have
on
too.
the back window. I'm like, oh, what are you into? It's Wiccan stuff.
Once upon a time, that was like kind of culturally frowned upon. You wouldn't even think about doing that unless you wanted to be like a pariah.
Yep. There's a gal I follow on Facebook. She's works at a reputable business here in town, and she's really nice. I've met her a few times. And her and her friends every Halloween get together and they do a really high-end photo shoot, and they dress up like witches, and they make a pentagram on the ground and do a seance. They do all these things, and they get all these high-end photos of it because it looks sexy and fun. It's like,
That sounds cool, Riley.
I want to do that.
man,
I want
it's
to do
like,
that.
what are you playing with there?
Yeah,
It's
no
like,
kidding.
gosh.
Wait a minute.
But it seems cool. It's kind of interesting, but to understand all that and know where all that comes from and understand that the world we live in, I think is really helpful for Christians. But to turn a blind eye on it, or just be like, well, God's in control and Jesus wins at the end. It's like, yet at the same time, we're living in this world. for the foreseeable future. And I think you need to understand the natural and supernatural world around you. As a Christian, I believe.
I got invited to it last Halloween.
To what?
I'm joking. I dressed up as a wizard last Halloween, so if you're witches, I can go.
You're Gandalf.
That's Gandalf.
Yes.
Gandalf.
Don't worry, I'll be here.
But even with
Yeah.
the Lord of the Rings a little bit, but more so the Harry Potter series.
Yeah.
I mean, there for a while, like in certain Christian circles, like, oh, that's just demonic and it's witchcraft.
Mom and Dad would not let me
Yeah.
read the books or watch the movies.
Yeah.
Christy and Travis covertly had me watch the first 2 movies.
And I don't think it's like at all demonic or anything.
And then I went through the books and I was like, this is fine. And that was kind of one of the moments where I realized that like my parents, like in the moment I thought I understood.
Yeah.
And I was probably naive to do so as a kid.
Sure.
But as an adult, I realized like, yeah, I did actually understand better than my parents in that situation.
Right.
Because they were reactionary,
Yeah.
which many parents were up through the 70s, 80s, 90s with all kinds of culture. You experienced that?
That was D&D when I was a kid. It
Yeah.
was out of the pit of hell,
yeah.
and you're basically worshiping Satan, and you're going to get demon possessed if you play D&D.
It's just a glorified like war game.
It's a
Yeah. And then Lord of the Rings comes by, perfectly fine with it.
yeah,
Why? We don't know.
But he was Christian, so it's okay.
because of the author, right?
Even though J.K. Rowling says that she was too.
Yeah.
And like you go through the whole Harry Potter series and you see that like Harry Potter is kind of like an analogy of Christ
Yeah,
in a way. And she did that on purpose.
on purpose. Yeah,
Like, no, it doesn't matter. That was definitely a turning point for me where I realized like my parents don't quite get the new stuff the way
And-
that I do.
and it's okay to a certain extent, and it's understandable. But again, I think you're kind of doing your kids a disservice when you make too many things, the forbidden fruit, and we can't look at that or go there, and without even really fully understanding it either. Because I think there's a lot of great conversations that can come out of the Harry Potter books and movies.
Yeah.
I don't think it's attracting kids towards witchcraft
No.
or sorcery. I mean, what are you going to get a wand and start casting Harry Potter spells?
I never had any interest in doing so at all.
Right. Yeah.
And also, like, the things that we withhold from our kids, we actually explain to them why we're doing it. Like, we didn't let Felicity watch Turning Red on Pixar. And we explained to her that, like, well, it has certain things in it that, like, we don't agree with as Christians.
Yeah.
And we just kind of left it at that.
Yep.
And we kept it simple. But, like, when we do withhold something from them, we say that it's basically just along the lines of something like that. But, like, we tell them why.
Yeah. And once you're older, you can decide if you want to watch it yourself. But by then, you'll probably have more understanding around that, and hopefully you're in the same place that you would agree with that.
Right. They're like, you can watch Turning Red when you're 14 if you still care about it, but at that point, whatever.
She wasn't missing out. It wasn't that good.
Exactly. But like with D&D, like I have in my spare time when I can remember to, have been like slowly like making like Photoshop like little cards for like I want to like print out and cut out things like bronze sword +3.
Yep.
And like make all these little things to where I can like make a little D&D campaign for the kids. And then like at the dinner table we do a little D&D game. And like you give them the little cards that show like what their weapons and armor do and like the plus and the minuses and all that. And then I roll the dice and see if they can do it and do a very simple D&D game. Like we're getting to the point like City's 8, Owen's 5, like we're pretty close to the point where we can start doing that with them.
Yeah.
And like I'm really excited for that because like they're starting to get into that like imaginative era of their life, which I'm sure Holly had that point.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, now all of a sudden they're like very creative and they're thinking about really lofty things in a way that they weren't before.
It's cool to see when it happened. Yeah.
And I want to like encourage that with like just basic D&D stuff. Like it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I don't have to put like a battle mat out with like figures and like move the squares and everything. It's just like there's a goblin. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And I think that they're going to have a good time with that.
Yeah.
And like mom and dad never would have allowed that because they thought it was from Satan.
Right.
And like the disparity, the like difference in culture, and getting back to the whole thing about like what they knew as kids, which was just like the radio and basic TV.
Yeah.
Like I don't blame them.
Right.
Like I don't hold it over their head that they didn't let me watch or listen to Harry Potter or read Harry Potter or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because it was so far beyond that. Like so much happened
Mm-hmm.
in the 20th century
Mm-hmm.
that over the course of like a few generations there were massive shifts. Like even you,
Mm-hmm.
like when you were born versus raising even like Ollie right now.
Yeah.
Like there's a big difference.
Absolutely.
You didn't grow up with Fortnite. He did.
No, I didn't.
A little bit.
A little bit.
But like again, like even still, like you, born in 74, and then you, and then the disparity between you and Ollie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's so much happening so quickly in human history in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
That like I give a bunch of grace
Agreed.
to any parents because like I can tell when people try their best.
Yeah.
And I can tell when they don't.
Right.
Like our parents tried, and I could see a lot of siblings in our family that are definitely trying,
Yeah.
you included. And it's a hard, complicated world to navigate day to day.
At least researching stuff is easier now.
Yes,
Like for our parents, like how would you have researched D&D?
exactly.
All you know is a few things you've heard or something you saw on the
Word of mouth.
700 Club
Mhm.
on TBN or whatever station
Yep.
it was,
Yep.
and that was it. And unfortunately, a lot of that I think they would blow stuff out of proportion. Backmasking of music. That was. I mean, Dad would go and lecture at churches about it. He was really into it. And now it's like mostly been kind of debunked. Even if there was something there, it's like listening to something backwards is a really subconsciously training your brain to worship Satan. Probably not.
I remember Jimmy Page, the guitarist for Led Zeppelin, when he was asked about that, he was like, it was hard enough to get it right front to back rather than back to front. Like that's all they cared about. Which granted, like he's into the occult and all that stuff, but like I when he says that, like I believe him. Like when I hear the Stairway to Heaven solo, I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna think that you tried to put something in that backwards just to make people
Right.
worship Satan.
But then, people back then on the 700 Club would have said, well, it was so easy for him to write because it was basically Satan was pushing the pen and he wrote the song in 20 minutes and it was a demonic influence and all the things. It's like,
Where's your evidence for that?
and what did it really do to anybody? I don't know. Why isn't it happening anymore if it was so effective? Yeah, I don't know.
But also, like, Stairway to Heaven, like, you listen to that song and you try to get any kind of, like, evil, demonic vibe from it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
It's like that's not the... I don't feel like that's the intent of that song at all when I listen to it.
Yeah, and there was other, probably more overt stuff in music that was darker and, I guess even Hotel California, if you really read up on what that was all about, that was kind of more out in the open, but again,
Do you guys know about
Kind of a
the Christian song that Black Sabbath made?
No.
You know about this? So, look up Black Sabbath on, like, maybe Spotify. There's a album called, like, Master something something. It's, like, purple words on, like, a black background or something like that.
Oh, yeah, the,
Master of Puppets, Metallica?
no.
No.
Okay.
Black Sabbath.
Oh my goodness. The Master of Reality?
Possibly. And then what are the songs? Lord of This World. Okay, so this is an album that came out in '71, Master of Reality, and I want to say that one of the band members, maybe the bassist, was like devout Catholic. And I know that Ozzy has been like, at least like positive towards Christianity and Catholicism in general.
Yeah.
Whether or not his life shows that is another thing. But they came out with Lord of This World in response to people calling them like a satanic band.
Oh.
So for this album, they had this song, which is like, you go look up the song and it's just kind of classified as like Christian rock, Christian metal
From Black Sabbath.
from Black Sabbath, and like the lyrics are very like descriptive about like Jesus and Satan, and it's like a very pro-Christian song. Like Black Sabbath has a Christian rock song
That's wild.
in response to people being like, no, they're evil and satanic.
Interesting. Huh.
But like, you don't hear people talking about like our
Right.
our parents talking about that.
Yeah.
But like they purposely went out of their way to make like a Christian rock song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it was just cool back then to like look kind of dark. I mean, even Alice Cooper. I mean, he's a professed Christian for decades now. You know, and he's still on tour. He's still performing. He still looks like the same kind of weird, creepy
Yep.
guy.
Yep.
And he's even said, he's like, oh, it's just all show and it's just performance stuff. You know, it's theater basically.
Yeah.
And people enjoy it. I mean, even Iron Maiden. Like those were probably some concerts to go to. They got the big like
No kidding.
mummy guy. They had a name for him. I can't remember what he's called. Like he's on the stage and he's moving and stuff, smoke, and it was like. I remember Dad bought one. That was back when he was into talking about this stuff. He had a secret box of stuff in the office at our house on Grouse Place, and Mike found it, and so we pulled all this stuff out. And there was like an album. I don't remember which it was, but it was the cover, and it had like the Egyptian god thing, and then there's like gravestones, and there's like little stuff written on the gravestones. So I'm like, can I really try to read it, see if there's like secret messages, And there probably were, but it was just for fun, because they're just like, because their fans are all into what they're doing. It's like, oh, let's sneak some secret stuff in there on the album cover, and
Right.
But are they sitting around worshiping Satan the whole time? It's like, or are they just writing music and trying to be interesting? And there was, I mean, some of those did get into the occult and some weird stuff, at least for a while. I don't know exactly about that band.
I don't want to like discredit the concerns, because like I don't think they were unfounded.
Yeah.
Because there were definitely there was a response in rock music to like the saccharine evangelical Protestant kind of stuff, the Buddy Hollies and all that. It's like,
Right.
let's like, once Paul McCartney made Helter Skelter, it's like, oh, let's make really gritty music that's just like super, that's kind of the beginning of metal and punk and all that kind of stuff, the really countercultural response type of music.
Yeah. As well as grunge.
Yeah, like all that. The counterculture movement kind of began with the hard rock stuff, like late Beatles going into Led Zeppelin and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It didn't really exist before that. It was all just pop music.
Yeah.
There wasn't we need to respond to pop music. That didn't happen until like the late 60s.
I do think there could have been some extra information, lyrical content provided by some of these artists doing LSD and other stuff. Like the more I've read about like psilocybin and all that kind of stuff, Joe Rogan talking about it, like you're not the same person afterwards, like for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like it's opening pathways in your brain. Almost every single person that gets into that stuff and does it, they're usually visited in their visions by gray aliens telling them that we need to stop with the nukes and the world's going to come to an end. They all have the same experience, which is really weird. Like if you're opening your mind that much and maybe the veil really thins out, I think you could be privy to stuff you're not supposed to see or know or hear. And so I think it's possible that, some artists maybe had some of those experiences and brought some of that into their music. Again, not to like lead people down a certain way, but even Stephen King, like people say his best books are books he doesn't even remember writing. 'Cause he was doing so much freaking coke, and he was drunk, just drinking all the time. What was the book?
All his stuff in
Just
the-
recently, he's like,
in the
I
80s.
don't even remember writing that book.
Well, he doesn't remember writing Cujo.
Cujo, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
He was whacked out on cocaine when he was writing that. And then so much stuff, like he doesn't remember writing most of it. When I think of all of his best books, they are in the 80s. The Shining, It, Cujo,
Pet Cemetery.
like all of it is in the 80s when he was
The
having
Shining?
his, like he has, like, there's been maybe like the occasional, like, 11, 22, 63, stuff like that in the modern era, but when it comes to like his greatest novels, they're all in that chunk of when he was blitzed out of his mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that says about him, but
Or what it says about doing that to your brain that then allows you to write just super fascinating, wild. I don't know.
But also, like, we having toyed with THC a little bit, like, that when you are on that, it doesn't feel the same as when you're like drunk and you're viewing the world incorrectly. It's like, I'm kind of tapping into something here that, like, I don't feel like I was able to experience before.
I agree. The jury's still out on that for me personally.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah.
It's a little confusing,
Yeah.
but I mean, I just kind of chalk it all up to the same thing we've been talking about different dimensions and like just being able, because I feel like our reality is way more multifaceted than we realize. It's not just materialism, which a lot of Christians kind of fall into the trap of, like, it's materialism and then you're also a soul somewhere.
Right.
And I think it's way more complicated.
I agree. Always like the saying that we're spiritual beings having a,
Physical experience or
physical
whatever.
experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is not to like be Gnostic or anything,
Agreed.
because our bodies are
We don't need to
definitely-
hate our bodies or anything like that.
Yeah, because like our bodies will be regenerated and we'll have, we're equal parts physical and
Yeah.
spiritual.
We're not just a meat suit, like some people like to say. I think the body we were given is actually unique and special. Yeah. Agreed.
Nice. Is that our ending point?
I think so.
Cool. Good episode.
Yeah, agreed. Covered a lot of interesting stuff.
This was a very religious one, I feel like.
Didn't have too many side conversations, which is good, because that gets distracting for...
Well, we
On
went
camera.
long enough that I feel like we all had enough to talk about, which is nice. What are the odds we get back together before Don leaves? Slim?
Yeah, and I think he's... if he wants to come back around and make it happen, great. But that definitely sounds like he needs to just kind of have a... He just needs to get away, which I totally get.
No, after what he said, I really like that.
Yeah. I'm busy every weekend in October. We're going out of town twice. We're taking Nora to Hawaii first week of October. And then we're staying for a mommy-daddy vacation, which we haven't been on in over a year. Andrea had a really nice closing, closed on the church property, got land, so it's a $60,000 commission. She had to pay 20% to Bray, and there was a referral fee that she had to pay to Ray Rickard and some other stuff. But so we paid a bunch of back stuff that we owed, some tax bills and other stuff. So that's been nice, getting caught up on a lot of that. We still have some cash left over. And then she's got some listings and some stuff that
Yeah.
a lot of interesting feedback. I think what you did on the Palisade property was super helpful, because even I told Andrew, like, people aren't going to get this property. They're not going to get how to get there, for one thing, and they really need to see the view. So I think you captured that really well with your drone footage. And
Nice.
I think you even had like the little arrow on like, go this
Yeah.
way up the road.
Yeah.
I don't think it's under contract yet, but she's had tons of people looking at it, interested in it.
I saw that she did drop the price, which I know the client, when I was there and I shot it, she wasn't eager on ever dropping the price from listing. But
I think she's becoming more motivated.
that's good.
There's a old abandoned mine on the property. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh.
She knows it's there. She has no idea like who owned it. It's with the property, but she probably doesn't have any mineral rights or anything.
Oh.
But there's been people asking about that too. It's like,
Interesting.
what about that mine?
It's
She's
a
like, I don't know.
really weird parcel because of like when I tried to do like the outline on the drone photo, like I was trying to like kind of like look, because I look at the like top down view on
Yeah.
the assessor site, and then I look at my drone photo and I'm like, go up there, okay, and then down here, and then it zigzags across.
Because topographically, it's just
Yes, it's
Yeah.
a huge mess. So like I tried to get it as close as I could from
Yeah.
the angles I had, but
Yeah.
it's really strange because like I thought that maybe that was why it was maybe not selling as quickly, because it's a really strange parcel on an incline that you can't necessarily do a whole lot with unless you're
Right.
willing to put in the money to do something with it. But it's also a fairly small house,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
things considered. So I'm glad that she's at least getting nibbles on it
Yeah.
for.
it'll just be the right person that can see the vision there and wants to put some money into it and fix it up. And
Great view of the valley, though.
gosh, yeah, if you just want to sit up on the hill and drink coffee in the morning and just look
It
out.
was so easy to just like shoot the views of the valley from that place. So
So it feels like the real estate market's loosening up some. Rates keep coming down. We're looking to refi our fourplex in Clifton, but we're going to do, what's it called? A I mean, can't even think what it stands for. It's like DSCR loan. But it's basically, it's like a hard money loan, sort of like a hard money loan. So it's private money. I don't even think it like shows up on your credit report as a loan. And it's like 5-year prepayment penalty, but the penalty goes down each year until the 5th year. So they really want the investor to get a return on their investment, which makes sense. But they want it to be in an entity, so we need to like create an LLC and basically refi it into this LLC with this private lender.
yeah,
And so we're going to do a cash out refi on that, and we're looking at a fourplex here in town to possibly buy to try to get another investment property,
okay.
which is interesting. And then they're looking to do that loan as well. But the rates, I think the last quote he had was 6.34 on a private money loan, which I think is definitely better than where it was in the 7s.
Sure.
And it'll probably, I mean, the Fed keeps talking about a drop, which they might do in the next 30 days, probably to try to help the current administration with the election. That stuff happens, but it'll help the consumer for sure, and could get a lot of people off the fence as far as, what they can afford. Because, the average house, if your house payment was $1,200, now it's like $2,500 for the same property, just because the interest rate's that much higher. All of a sudden, the price is a ton of people out of the market. So, hoping that that'll shift, and then even more stuff will happen. But long story longer. Gone most of the weekends in October. I think second weekend, I think I'm doing pregnancy board retreat. Third weekend, we're gonna try to take Oliver to Disney. Real short trip with that Breeze Air airline, that'll be the cheapest part, is actually flying out there. And I like Disneyland during Halloween because they do the whole Nightmare Before Christmas.
The Haunted Mansion
With the
thing.
Haunted Mansion, and it's just, as Nora would say, it's good vibes. It's just fun to be there.
Which should be open now, because I think they're done with their whole Princess and the Frog
I
thing.
heard that it was back open, so that's good. And then
It was closed when we were there.
third weekend, I'm going to our Florida house with a couple of guys I graduated with, and I might try to do like some deep sea fishing or something. It's like, what do you do with like a couple guys? It's like $700 for the day. That's like a half day trip, and they just go from Largo there out off the coast into the Gulf Coast there into deeper water, and $700, but you split it between 3 guys. It's not super expensive.
Yeah.
So my buddy that lives here, he had enough airline miles, he was able to pay for both of our flights out. We've got the property out there, so that won't really be an expense.
Mm-hmm.
So getting there and getting back, staying there, so it'll just be a few excursions, and so that'll be fun. And
Cool.
Last weekend of the month, maybe that was the last, I can't remember. But it would be fun to do one of these before Halloween.
So let me look at the calendar for next month.
Read some more Poe. And
So the 25th is a Friday. Halloween is the next Thursday.
so my guys' trip is the weekend before. So I'm gone the that weekend, 25th, 26th, 27th.
Okay. So we probably, if we were to do something, it would probably be after Halloween.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our week, and it doesn't have to be at night. It'd be kind of fun if it was like early evening where it's starting to get a little dim, and like I said, I could bring a few candles out or something. We could have a fire going. But yeah, weeknight. I mean, that might be tough for you guys to do that week. I know with Riley's work and everything.
Weeknights are not usually that bad for me because I don't have any work after like usually 2, 3, 4 o'clock. So
Okay.
it's just kind of contingent on you guys.
I don't work Tuesdays, so even if we wanted to, like the 29th.
My birthday.
Is it? That's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you probably don't want to do that on your birthday, but...
I mean, I'm not against it.
Or the week before, the 22nd, Tuesday. You know, you could get going a little bit earlier.
Yeah, any kind of October recording, I'm good for.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about it more as it gets closer, but... Yeah, if we can make something happen, that'd be fun.